All right, Heather. A through Z.
Let's go J. No particular reason, just J.
What if you picked the letter Q, T, or M?
Okay, let's go with Q.
Q.
Yeah.
So years ago, Quentin Tarantino was like, I'm going to direct 10 movies, and then I'm going to be done. His 10th movie was supposed to start filming this year, called The Movie Critic. And he decided he's not going to do it anymore. So it's no longer his final movie.
Just altogether scrapped?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Interesting.
But this also isn't the first time he's done this. He did the same thing with The Hateful Eight. He did the same thing with Pulp Fiction. So who knows? It may or may not be his last movie. Or it may be a different movie that's his last movie. Or he might, do more than 10 movies. Who knows?
Okay. That's interesting. I still don't understand why he's like all about, I only want to do 10 movies.
I don't know. To him, there's probably some like, this one random director only ever did 10 movies, so that's all I'm going to do type of thing. Almost like the same reason why in the 40s they decided to cap presidential terms to, 2 terms or 10 years. Oh, because they were like, it was good enough for George Washington. It's good enough for us.
Oh, I was just going to ask, were there any details given as to why he decided
not that I heard.
Stop it? Was there difficulty shooting, or was there?
They hadn't started filming yet. They were supposed to start filming in like August or September.
Oh, okay. So they hadn't even started that process. Okay.
No. He might have finished the script and just gone, nah, I don't like it. So who knows?
Yeah. And maybe if it's his last movie, maybe he felt like, I want to go out with a bigger bang than this. Maybe it just didn't feel like a final film for him.
Who knows? But that's apparently a thing. And on a quick different note, apparently Rebel Moon Part 2 sucks, so I feel slightly vindicated when we talked about it.
Which I forgot was like a thing that was happening this year still. I thought it was going to be a while.
Part 2 dropped last week. Or at least as of the time of this recording, Part 2 dropped last week. Apparently no one likes it.
That's why we need the Snyder cuts, man. That's why we need the Snyder cuts.
I was listening to a review of it and they were talking about it and they were like, the sad thing is especially in this one, maybe not as much in Part 1, but in Part 2, they're like, you can really feel those missing cuts. Like you can feel like it's just going along and like a whole scene is missing. So.
Interesting. We're just going to wait on them cuts, man. Gotta wait on the mess cuts.
And from what I've heard, people that have actually watched them, they're like, for the most part, most people are like, I'm not even going to bother with these other cuts. They're like, I don't want to sit through the shit again. They're like, if this was maybe mildly better, sure, but I'm not going to do it again based on this shit. I want to see a slightly better version of this bullshit.
But it's the Snyder cut.
Who gives a fuck? His last Snyder cut sucked too. Yes, Jastin, I said it.
Can't believe you didn't like it.
Yeah, you can. You heard all my reasons why.
Oh, yeah, I did.
And I had numerous. And then they went, hey, guys, let's do a black and white version. Yeah.
I feel like, Jastin, I think you gave it the highest score.
No, I think Kurt did.
Or maybe Kurt did. Yeah, that's right.
Kurt loved it.
That little ass hat.
I liked it.
You liked it. He loved it. Right.
You liked it, didn't you, Heather? Thought you liked it.
I did. I don't think I was as high on it, but I was fine with it. Yeah. I think I gave it at least a B.
Like, yeah. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I was one that came in that I hadn't seen the original cut. So the Snyder cut's the only one I saw.
Lucky you. Lucky you.
Not
maybe
lucky
that's why
her. She saw the inferior cut.
The inferior cut.
The other one's better.
Ugh. Yuck.
And apologies to anybody watching this on YouTube. My video is even worse. I've got less of a setup because I am officially out of this house this weekend. So I've got even less stuff now. I've literally just got my laptop, my mixer, and this microphone. Not even my microphone, remember? This is a different microphone. So but this is it.
Just the essentials.
I will be set up, hopefully, at least mostly. It might not be my final setup, but I'll be mostly set up somewhere new next episode. So I'll be back to a black curtain just like everybody else, but I'll have my up lights because I'm not a degenerate. So.
I heard it, and I understand what you're saying.
Just saying. I've told you guys, accessorize. And you guys just refuse. So. That's all I'm saying. Accessorize. Anyway, you guys ready to do this episode?
Yep.
Yeah. Cat.
Somebody will listen to me.
Nobody knows anything but you.
All right.
The way you said that.
Come on.
Cinema Slayers. I figured he was reaching down to one of them.
I was
your cat.
I was using my computer sleeve on the door to get them to stop clawing at the door because they're outside the door. So I was trying to get them to stop clawing at the door because it's just making a bunch of rattling and shit. That's what I was doing.
I just don't know. Like the way Jastin said that was funny. It reminded me of like, I don't know, something said in a movie, like in that tone. I don't know. It was funny. Maybe it was like the Mystic River thing. Is that your daughter? Is that my daughter in there?
Is that your cat out there?
Just thought it was that darn cat.
Who was in that? That was Christina Ricci,
man.
right? She's in that darn cat.
Yeah.
Christina Ricci.
I remember when she used to do good
I ain't
shit.
seen that in a minute.
No one
been a
has,
minute.
Jastin. No one has. Frankly, not that many people saw it when it was out either.
Yeah. It's like 3 people, I think.
At least 3.5. I know I've seen at least part of that movie. I don't remember shit about it, but I know I've technically, by definition, at least watched it once. And to be fair, that wasn't in theater. That got rented.
Yeah, I think it was a rental for me too, because I was into Christina Ricci. I mean, still am. I mean, there's not a reason not to be into her, but you know what I mean. At that time.
Well, yeah, there was at that time. She did that dark cat. That's more than enough reason.
I just looked up the score because I was curious. 13%. Audience score is at 24%.
Yeah, no one
almost
liked
14.
it.
Almost a respectable 14.
Justin, name one time a 14 out of 100 has been respectable and it not be golf.
I'm sorry. It's Christina Ricci.
I don't give a shit. Maybe
we forgave her.
No, we forgave her. No, we didn't.
Oh, it's just me.
No, Jastin, did you really forgive her?
Just make him question
cat
everything.
Was terrible.
I'm just saying.
Our cat was bad.
Do you really forgive
really
her?
Bad. It was really bad, and it's supposed to be a remake of a kind of classic. I don't even know if you would even call the old one a classic. Is the old one a classic? Nobody talks about it like it is.
None of this shit's a classic.
But they act like that when that came out, the Ricci one, that it was a remake of, and they were like, oh, it's a remake of an old. I don't hear people just like, oh yeah, when they're talking about the classics, nobody mentions that darn cat.
Yeah,
so
no
I'm
one mentions
question
half the shit that Disney calls classics. Everybody acts like Disney doing remakes of their old movies is a new phenomenon. They've been doing that shit for years.
Mm-hmm. It has been kind of like that. I mean, there are some that are respectable, like Freaky Friday. I think Freaky Friday is
that's a good movie, honestly.
Territory.
Weirdly enough, it requires Lindsay Lohan to be respectable. Because Parent Trap ain't bad either.
That's true.
She was tight. She was tight in both of those.
And
she might be one of the best things
Friday,
that came
she
from
was
Disney.
great.
And realistically speaking, guys, let's be real. Herbie Fully Loaded is probably the best Herbie movie ever made. And it's still pretty shitty.
And see, that one I never saw.
It might be. You might be right about that. Though I have a soft spot for Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo. When he got a little car girlfriend and they were holding car doors, looking at fireworks.
Man, just fuck right off. I forgot that existed. Now I'm mad at you that I remember.
But no, you're probably right though. The Herbie Fully Loaded is probably the best Herbie. I mean, technically none of them are good movies, but if you had to rate them, that's probably a better one. And she was in that.
If somebody was like, you have to watch a Herbie movie or we kill you and your family, you'd begrudgingly at least agree to watch Herbie Fully Loaded.
It's just interesting. And I don't know why we didn't have this realization when we were talking about Mean Girls, but Lindsay Lohan did her thing. She really is the best part of a lot of things she's in.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't say she's the best part. I would say, Jamie Lee Curtis is the better part of Freaky Friday.
I think they're really equal though. Because I think Lindsay Lohan does a really good job of pretending to be Jamie Lee Curtis.
No.
Not so much.
I think I'm in Heather's camp. I think it's kind of a tie. I liked them both so much in that.
Yeah.
I'm not
to be fair,
Lindsay
it's just
Lohan.
more fun to see Jamie Lee Curtis be a teenager, though.
I mean, I'm not saying that Lindsay Lohan did a bad job. I'm just saying she did not do as good of a job as Jamie Lee Curtis did. That's all I'm saying.
She was more fun to watch because her role was supposed to be more fun. But yeah, no, I get it. Their chemistry, them together, was just very good.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is kind of one of those actresses, when she kills, boy, she kills. She really kills. You remember her.
Yeah. Yeah, I like her
kills.
a lot. I feel like when you said that, you were specifically thinking of True Lies. Why am I thinking that?
Yep.
Is that what you're thinking of?
Yep. I totally was.
I knew that's what you were thinking. That's what everyone mostly knows her to just kill in.
I almost forgot we actually started the episode.
Yeah, sorry. We tangented there.
Yeah, we sure did.
We hard tangented. It's literally intro music and we hard left it.
We just really were in news mode still.
I don't even think you've introduced anything
about
no. this episode. We just, it's because of your darn cat, Sterling. It's because of your cat.
It wasn't because of my cat. It was because of your comment on my darn cat. Anyway.
It's me. It's always me.
Yeah. Calm down, Taylor.
That darn Jastin.
That's true. That darn Jastin. Hey, Cinefans, and welcome back to another episode of the CSSterlingC podcast. I'm Sterling, and as always, I'm joined by Heather and that darn Jastin. And today we're going to talk about what we liked, didn't like, and everything in between with two movies. We're actually going to do both movies this time. We're actually going to talk about Civil War, and we're actually going to talk about Abigail. We are going to go spoiler-free recommendations and scores, and then into a more spoiler-centric section with time codes in the description to allow you to jump around in both audio and video formats. And with all that, we're going to go to the one we missed last week. We're going to go Civil War. I'll start it. You know, Alex Garland, for the most part, is a really good director and a pretty good writer. As far as directing goes, I was introduced to him with Ex Machina. That's an amazing movie. He did Annihilation. That's a really good movie. You know, he did Men, which was a movie. You know, it had a theatrical release and everything. You know, I saw it in the theater. I'm 90% sure I ate popcorn while I watched it. And then here in 2024, he is doing Civil War. And I feel pretty bamboozled by this man, because I'm kind of starting to think, why the fuck did I think he was any damn good at what he does? Because this movie is not good. It's not. It's well shot. It's well acted. It is a narrative mess that tries to use a bunch of shock and bullshit to hide the fact that ultimately it is the shallowest movie about something that could be a deep topic that you could possibly fucking make. I don't feel like this is a spoiler. You know, you never find out really why there's a civil war. And I know people like him or people that want to defend it might say, well, that's not necessary. I'm going to argue it is. Because to me, once I finished watching this movie, I didn't feel like it didn't matter. I felt like it wasn't there because he could not write an actual reason as to why. So you just avoid it to just have a cop-out. I will also say that this movie, whilst it could be accurate to how things really are, maybe this is one of those times where you stray away from accuracy so that it feels coherent and doesn't feel like bullshit. Because sometimes that weird thing of reality is what feels like bullshit. And with that, this movie is the way that these reporters are just in there. They just stroll up and they're like, hey, you guys having a firefight? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, hey, can we just, be right in the middle of the way with you guys? And they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. For all I know, that's what war correspondents could actually do. But it looks dumb and it feels weird. So maybe bend reality and don't do the accurate thing because it felt dumb in this movie. And on top of all that, to sum this up real quick, and I know why this movie feels the way it does. I know why narratively it is the way it is. It's the simplest explanation in the world. That's because Alex Garland is British. And I don't feel like he actually understands America. Therefore, this movie is a American Civil War movie, like a modern American Civil War movie, written by somebody that's not from here. So it has that distinct issue of they don't really understand what it would mean in this country, or some of the things that would have to happen in this country for it to be what he's saying this movie is. So in the end, I watched this movie and was just like, I did not like it. That was like the first thought I had when the credits hit was, I did not like that. And it hadn't changed. The more I've listened to other people talk about it, the more I've had conversations with some people about it, at no point do I end up just ever really going, that's an interesting point. I now like this movie. Or, that's an interesting point. Maybe I dislike this movie a little less. I just always end up sitting on, I don't like it. Jastin, what about you?
Cool. Well, I sat in there and I was like, okay, this is called Civil War. And I was waiting to see Tony Stark and Iron Man and all my favorite heroes. And then kind of had to check and make sure I was in the right movie. Because I was like, man, I thought this was Civil War. You know what I'm saying? And somebody had to tell that joke. One of us three had to do it. So I did it. And it's over.
I don't think someone had to, Jastin. I think you just wanted to.
You would have been in for a better movie if it had been that one. Sorry.
That's a truthful statement right there.
So, yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't the Civil War I thought it was going to be. But, Sterling, I don't think I agree with you completely. I don't feel that this movie is bad. I don't think it's great either. I do think I wanted a little more at the end. When it ended, I felt like there was some loose ends that maybe it didn't tie or maybe not even that, but maybe that's the wrong way to put it. But like the abrupt way in which certain events happened and then not expounding on some of the things that happen at the end, it just kind of ends. And I question if maybe we should have done a little bit more with the ending as far as just being more clear about some things. But the journey, so I do have some, I think, issues with the ending, but the journey itself, I did like this for the most part. Like, I thought that the acting was really good. Kirsten Dunst, who I haven't seen in a while. I'm trying to think of the last movie that I saw with her in it as a lead.
I don't know about movie, but she was in Fargo. I remember that. The TV show.
Was it, what was the movie with Benedict Cumberbatch? You guys didn't like it, but I did. Dog? It was on Netflix. Was that it? That's it, right?
Yep.
I think that is her last movie she was in with kind of a big role. So it's been a minute. But this was her really in the lead role. Like she's one of the more pivotal characters in this. And, I miss Kirsten Dunst in this kind of role, especially watching this. I thought that she was really good in this. As this journalist reporter, who sort of, is desensitized to a lot of things, been through a lot of things, but at the same time, has her own struggles and her own trauma. So I thought that was good. I liked Callie Spaney. Is that how you say that? Hopefully that's how you say that.
I think so.
Callie
Yeah.
Spaney. Okay. I hope I'm getting it right. Lady who played Jessie in this, which was kind of like she idolized Kirsten Dunst's character Lee and was kind of along for the ride. And I liked some things about what happened to that character and kind of the arc that character took. It's interesting that what you said about this whole thing about this sort of civil war that's going on in America. I do think that there were some things that maybe could have been more clear about the Civil War. But I also will say that I do think I understand why so many of those lines were blurred. I think it was on purpose narratively why you didn't get full explanations of that, or why certain things were kept in the dark. There are even scenes where characters are trying to find out what side other characters are on, and the way that it plays out in the narrative, I think that I can say with confidence there was a point to that. I do think there is a lesson in this movie about the caution of what can happen when different sides, different viewpoints, the way that people look at government, their lives, the way they live and stuff like that. What happens if how do I put this without spoiling anything? I think that there's a real question the film tries to answer of what happens if things get to a point to where differences spiral out of control, to the point to where it doesn't even matter what the differences are. People are picking sides and going to war and things like that. And what happens if we get past the point to where we can't live with each other's differences? And I think that is a question that the movie proposes. And I think it structures certain things. It lets you know and not know certain things based on answering that question. And I think that I can explain that better with specific scenes as the narrative goes along. So I guess to say maybe I just understood it. You know, I kind of understood what the director Garland was kind of going for in that regard. I think in doing that, it kind of forces the viewer to look more at the violence occurring, the lack of humanity occurring, and kind of, and hopefully you ask the question, is any of this worth the differences? Is doing this to people worth the differences of opinion, the differences of how we want to live, things like that? I hope that as you're watching these people do these things, it's dawning on you that, man, what could possibly propel people to do things like this? And the answer should be nothing, but sometimes in this country, we've seen worse. We've seen it firsthand.
Well, the thing is, though, is I think that there are things that could warrant some stuff depending on like what it is. What if this president was like, I'm declaring myself dictator and I am, you know, like, let's just say for like, you know, lack of a better like analogy or whatever, just say like, I'm reinstituting slavery. And it really does become like a war like the original Civil War. You know what I mean? There are times like that where some of this stuff, like if you're getting borderline like genocide in this country or, you know, things like that, I think that there are things that would justify this. And I think that there are things that would have clear cut sides on with stuff like this. That's why I think it's necessary. Because there are certain things that I feel would justify us going to war with ourselves, depending on what it is.
I get that. And I think at the narrative point that this movie was at, they had been fighting for years and years and years and years. And so you kind of had essentially a lot of people sort of inheriting this fighting. You know, you had people who didn't seem to fully understand all the sides, but we're fighting, so we're fighting because that's what we're doing. So I think also the movie was showing that too. You know, this had been going on for a while, and we're looking at it from the perspective of people who I guess are supposed to be neutral. I think that's why the journalist following them perspective was important, because you as an audience member is supposed to be neutral. But I think the reasons, to me, I felt like the film was trying to say, why couldn't the reasons be, you know, could it get to a point to where whatever caused it, could it possibly get to a point to where we can't reason within reason? And you could potentially have sides fighting like this and people just being killed like this and everything like that. And I think that there's a real idea here of really there is no real winner in war. Like, is there a real winner as far as the bodies, the people, what happened, everything like that? I think this is more about the cost of it than the things that sometimes cause it, which sometimes could be things that which maybe those are things that could have been negotiated if cooler heads prevail. But I think this is about when they don't prevail. I think this is about when, this is looking at an extreme kind of version of this. So I think it was purposeful for the narrative to frame itself that way. I don't feel like the point of this was to give you a good reason for it. I think the point was to say there is no good reason for it. That's what I feel like. And I think if you're somebody in your camp that just needs more of a reason, because why are these people, and I understand your position, man. You're looking at it and you're going, okay, all these people are doing all this killing. All these people are doing all this stuff is happening, but I need to know why. And that's reason. And I get that. And that's fair game. But I feel like the movie didn't give it to you because the message is there isn't one. And giving you one might have taken away from that message. Because if it's justified, then it's a different movie entirely. I think if you don't know, and if the reasons aren't given because they're so blurred, the lines are so blurred, and it's almost like, but look what these people are doing to each other. What good reason could there be? I feel like that's more where the movie was trying to be than giving a reason for everything.
I mean, and I get that. I'll then from that point, I'd argue, nah, there's still some good reasons. Like, and that's why I still would fundamentally disagree with the way this movie's handling it. You know, okay, you don't want to give us a reason why because you're just saying there's no reason why good enough. I don't know. Stopping Nazis seemed like a damn good reason to go to fucking war. You know? Freeing enslaved people seemed like a pretty damn good reason to go to war. I think that there are some damn good reasons to go to war. I don't like war. I think it'd be fantastic if we all lived in the fucking 24th century like they do in Star Trek and we don't got war. But we don't. And sometimes there's reasons we go to war. And, yeah. That's why I would still call it a cop-out. You know? Because I think if you want to say that it's needless, regardless of whatever, I think give it a bullshit reason then. Because they say things throughout the movie, like the Antifa massacre. They're like, oh yeah, ever since the Antifa massacre. Well, okay, is that Antifa got massacred or was that Antifa committed a massacre? And I know argumentatively speaking, if you're like, hey, the reason doesn't matter, it's okay to leave that vague. You just call it that because it could be like, well, it could be this, it could be that, depending on what side of the political spectrum on, you're going to think one way. You know, if you're pro Antifa, you might be like, oh, well, obviously they got massacred. If you're anti Antifa, you're like, oh, they obviously did a massacre. I get that. But once again, I think that that's just, to me, was it just still comes across to me as a lazy way. Like you're just throwing out buzzwords and throwing out stuff. You're like, oh, well, this is a hot button topic. So that's why we're going to do it. And that's where this movie comes across to me either way as incomplete.
Gotcha. And I get the reasons that you talked about, like the Nazi and stuff like that. I definitely, there are reasons to go to war, but in this make-believe sort of dystopian movie situation, I think what the point that he was making is that a lot of times, especially with the way media is given to the public masses, the way information is spread to incite anger in people, and the way that different viewpoints, I mean, there's just so much like bullshit out there. I just don't know how believable it is that if this country was doing some sort of a civil war, I just don't know if it would be because of something noble like fighting Nazis. I just think it would mainly be somebody is misinforming and inciting people, and people are taking political views too seriously, and people are, I don't know. I just feel like if this country was going to be in a civil war, I don't think it would be for justified reasons. I think it would be motherfuckers not getting along, motherfuckers on some dumb shit and try to be selfish and make money and gain political power, all of that shit. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past this country to go to some kind of civil war over some dumb shit. I just wouldn't.
My quick counterpoint to that would be, nah, that still sounds like it might be a war against Nazis. That's my counter to that.
Well, maybe it could, but anyway, we would taper this conversation to the spoilers of the movie. But anyway, so that's how I looked at the message. And I think because I looked at the message that way, I enjoyed more of what was happening. But on top of just the messages and the underlying meanings of the film, there's some very well shot, intense scenes in this movie that I thought were well executed and were good. Like getting like this, like the way that these journalists were having to cover these wars and these conflicts and these situations, I thought that it was pretty amazing just how they were shot, how they were trying to get in and get as much footage as they could, trying to get these snapshots and these photos and risking themselves and sometimes getting in the way of the fighting and just all the kind of craziness that was going on. I thought that a lot of those scenes were very fun and executed well in how they were shot, and it was very intense. And there's one scene in particular that was very intense. You know, we've got some crazy ass soldiers and there's kind of this hostage situation, and, you know, our characters have to make some split-second decisions. And I thought that it was an excellent scene. It was well acted. I thought that it was well crafted. Jesse Plemons is kind of the leader in that scene. He's kind of the one who really shows up in that scene. That's kind of like his one scene, really, like his one big scene. And he kills it in that scene. And I thought that it was very, very intense, very, very well acted. So I don't think any of those things can be ignored. And then one of the characters, especially the way that this happens, the way that you see how this is affecting this character, and then what the character does at the end, I've heard a lot of different interpretations like, man, I didn't like what this character does. It felt abrupt. It felt out of nowhere, everything like that. But I don't know. I think I got it. I think I understood what happened at the end there. I think I understood what Alex Garland was trying to say with that. And I think that too is a byproduct of what all of this can do, to a person. So, and then on top of all of that, it was just an interesting perspective. It's this Civil War is going on. There's all this political stuff going on. We got a president sitting in office and people are targeting him and all this stuff is going on. And yet we are looking at this from the perspective of journalists and people taking pictures and traveling around. So I think the movie gets points for just being, for having a unique perspective, because normally I would think in a movie like this, you would be following soldiers, or you would be following political figures, or you would be following like the president making decisions. And it would be a movie about why the Civil War is happening and everything like that. But I got to give, the writers and the directors at least a kudos for filming this from a perspective that you don't normally get with this subject matter. And that's through the lens of the lens metaphorically and literally of the journalist trying to capture all of this. So all in all, I thought the movie was unique. I thought it had a lot of strong points. I thought it was well shot and well acted. And and the messages work for me. So I think all in all, that's a recipe for a pretty solid film.
Heather, 9 years later, sorry, me and Jastin were rude. Mainly me. I interrupted Jastin's point, so it's my fault. See,
I was about to say, it was kind of on you.
It's kind of on me. It's kind of on me. That darn Sterling. Heather, what about you?
It's a weird mix of, I agree with both of you on different points with it. For me, the movie is okay. It's fine. It's not great. I don't hate it, but if I'm being honest, it's not necessarily one that I just want to sit down and watch again for any reason. I do think that the acting is really good in this movie. I think it's really good acting, especially Kirsten Dunst. I actually think that she's probably the best thing about this movie. But it's like this weird thing of, I think the acting is well done, but at the same time, I don't think any of these characters are fleshed out enough for what it feels like the story that they're telling. Except for, Kirsten Dunst is the most fleshed out, but they're telling this from the perspective of these journalists, right? And these people on the road and getting in the action. And I just feel like they were missing that element of a little bit more backstory or a little bit more in depth with some of these characters so that you actually care a little bit more about them. I do feel like that element was missing a bit. And I will disagree with you, Jastin, on Jesse's character. I actually wasn't a fan of Jesse's character, but I think that kind of speaks to what I was saying just now about, I don't think they give me enough motivation for her. They don't give me enough like fleshed outness of her for me to feel like what she does or doesn't do is really justified. Like maybe a little bit, you kind of know, like you can understand maybe what she's doing and her motives, but I feel like it is a lot of guesswork, a lot of just, making a logical guess at like why she's doing what she's doing, because they just don't really give you enough to go off of. Like there are these small moments between some characters that, it feels like they've known each other for a long time and they have this relationship with each other. But I just think that as the audience of this, we don't really get to see enough of that, which was interesting because the perspective is all from them. So I think I would have just liked a little bit more of that, if that makes sense. And I do, like, no offense to anybody, but like kind of a waste of Nick Offerman, to be honest. Like, I really thought he was going to be a little bit of a bigger player in this, and all of that. But I also, that scene that you were talking about, Jastin, like, definitely, I do think that is probably the best scene of the movie. And it's just this weird mix of feelings I have about this movie, because I was intrigued the whole time. I was invested. I was like, I have no idea what's about to happen. And I was kind of like amped up to be like, okay, what are we doing? What do we need to watch out for? But at the same time, as enthralled as I was, I just feel like it had the potential to be so much more. And I do feel like by the end of this movie, you are kind of let down by any sort of, like, enthralling, intriguing nature of what's happening in the rest of the film is just sort of dismissed because of some abruptness and weirdness of how they decide to do the ending of this movie. So I think that's probably my biggest complaint about what they do. Like, I don't know. It just feels like the choices of some characters, they're not being backed up by you knowing their motivations enough. So that's kind of the thing. But it is beautifully shot, and I really do like the perspective that it is told from. I like that they're telling it from the perspective of these journalists, from these people just really in the middle of it all, and seeing a little bit of, like, Kirsten Dunst, where she's sort of jaded by some things because she's been doing it so long and all these other things, and sort of trying to pass down wisdom in a way to some of the other characters. But yeah, I just think that it had the potential there to be so much more. And I do also agree with Sterling that I think that for the purpose of what this movie is, we maybe needed a reason for what the Civil War was for. Whether it was a good reason or not, just knowing, like, this whole thing, the whole reason that this team is going to the president and all that, why? What is it that they are upset about? What is it that they do care about? What is the Civil War about? So I do agree with that point as well. Yeah, I just think it could have been told a little better, but at the same time, I didn't have a terrible time at the movie. Yeah, it felt like some things, not even like loose ends, I guess kind of loose ends, because you just feel like, I guess maybe it's a pacing thing, because it's more of, you get all of these things and you're so enthralled this entire time on their journey. And then it just feels like a switch up where they don't care anymore to kind of engage you from the characters' perspectives. It just, things are starting to happen. And that's about it. So it was just an interesting choice to me. But overall, the movie is fine. I think Kirsten Dunst is the reason it's probably higher up on the movie list than it would be without her in it. And also Jesse Plemons, for the 3 minutes he's in this movie, nailed it. He nails it every time. So yeah, that's mostly my feelings, is that it's an okay movie that had the potential to be a lot better.
Recommendations and scores?
Yeah.
Yep. Recommendations and score.
Jastin, go ahead and go.
Yeah, it's going to be a recommend from me. There's nothing bad about the movie, as far as, I don't think it's a bad enough movie to recommend. And, my criteria for that is, is the acting good enough? It is in the film. Is it shot well enough? Does it have at least a good enough story from beginning to end? Is it not boring? Movie's definitely not boring. I think it has enough going on. There's enough action set pieces. There's enough happening throughout the story that I think is compelling enough, and there are enough intense scenes to where I don't think that this would be a bore to sit through. So I think, there's entertainment value in that regard. And even though it doesn't all come together perfectly, I think it comes together enough. And just like the conversation me and Sterling had, if that's the kind of stuff that you're into, is movies that invoke conversation and things like that, well, then this is right up your alley, because that's exactly what the film is doing. Because of just the title in and of itself, Civil War, you can't help but talk about what incites civil war and politics and hate and what's going on in the country and how you saw it, or how it matches the country or how it doesn't, and all of this kind of stuff. So just that difference in what we thought the movie meant sparked that 15 whatever minute long conversation. That's the magic of a movie like this. It challenges views. It looks at it. It challenges you to absorb it, taste it, and then if you feel some sort of way afterwards, then the movie probably succeeded more than it would have if you didn't feel anything. So I think on those merits, I can recommend it. And like I said, it's got great acting, and for the most part, it is I can at least say it is an entertaining movie, especially from like an intensity kind of action standpoint. So with that being said, we'll give it about, we'll go 75 truckloads of dead bodies out of 100.
Heather, what about you?
This movie gives me like Purge vibes. That's kind of the feel of this movie for me. I feel like if you like those types of movies, that you will probably enjoy this one, because it feels along those lines a bit. And I think I guess I would fall in the camp of Jastin in this area, where it's like, it's not like a terrible movie. So it's not like, no, stay away from it, don't watch it. And it was intriguing, and it was enthralling. Like, it did have me guessing and wondering what was going to happen in every next scene. So I will give it that much. And yeah, the performance of Kirsten Dunst is really good. The performance of everybody, but she just stood out the most because she was the most fleshed out character in the movie. But I think, yeah, I'll recommend it, but I say go in there with the mindset of, you might not get the full story, but you'll get to see the interesting journey that they give you along the way to their end result, So that being said, I think my score, I'm just going to give it 65 abandoned helicopters out of 100.
No, I don't recommend it. I can't do it. Weirdly enough, contrary to you guys, I was fairly bored in this movie. It was very hard for me to latch onto anything, narratively speaking, because narratively speaking, I was finding it very shallow. I will say this, like you guys said, it's well acted. There's some good performances. There's some I very much question at least some of the stuff at the end too. I was very iffy on the end of this movie also. I'll give it 45. 45 just solid red sunglasses out of 100. Puts the Cinescore to 62. Spoilers?
Yep.
Yep.
Spoilers.
Heather, I feel so bad because you got so shunned on the non-spoilers. You start the spoilers.
Well, thanks. I mean, first off, like, I do just want to talk about that scene with Jesse Plemons because I think also because there's kind of to go back to what Sterling said about the director, because he's not from America. Like, I don't know if it was intentional that this movie is supposed to kind of feel like from the outside, this is what it looks like America is and what they're doing, or if it was just kind of what you said, where he's not originally from America. And so he's giving like the basics of what that might look like in America. I'm not sure. But yeah, I feel like it's the most realistic, I guess, type of character that you get in this movie is Jesse Plemons. Like, he feels like the worst part of America to a T. And I think he played it really well. He was honestly terrifying in his own way, because you're just like, he's so unhinged and chaotic, and you have no idea what he's going to do. And then and those were moments too where I actually kind of jumped a bit, because him just kind of shooting people completely caught me off guard. Like, I mean, it's not like it was super surprising that it happened, but just in the middle of conversations that he's trying to have with these people, he just is like, nope, you're gone. And I don't know. I feel like the mindset and the mentality that they give Jesse Plemons' character just feels very much like, unfortunately, what you see a lot of American people kind of feel like, where it's like, but are you like what type of American are you? Like, that whole mentality that he had and everything about that was just crazy. So I think that was part of the effectiveness of that scene, is because how many times have we heard people just on the news saying similar stuff to that? And it's crazy, because that was, pretty realistic for just the terrifying mindset that people can have in America in certain situations, and that's why I really liked his performance, because he just felt like a believable, just doing my duty, protecting America, cleaning house type of guy. Like, that was just who he was. And he did it in such an effective way in just the time he was given. Like, he just really did a great job with that. And that's such a great scene too, because you realize, like, when you see all those bodies, you're just kind of like, this is absolutely absurd. And Jesse getting kind of like knocked into the bodies, I think it actually, if there was ever going to be a turning point in her character, I feel like that was it. When she's just kind of there and she's surrounded by all of these dead bodies, and she's just kind of seeing the horror of the situation. And she was put in a terrible situation, which, granted, I'm not going to lie, maybe it's just me, I feel like she kind of is a little bit to blame for why things got out of hand in that situation. Like, the whole car chase down the thing, and she wants to switch cars and all these things, and just wants to do what she wants to do. And like, her kind of going off script a little bit in those moments is kind of what got them in that situation. Obviously, she didn't know that was going to happen, but I don't know. And maybe that's part of why I'm not super big on her character, because I just feel like she's just doing a lot of things that she's not really listening to the people around her who have more experience in the situation that they're in. And she's like, yeah, but I just want to experience it for myself. So I'm going to just do what I want to do. And to be fair, I understand that perspective, because sometimes it's like, oh, you got to learn the hard way. But in moments like that, where it's like life-threatening stuff, you feel like, no, let's listen to the people who have been doing this for much longer than you. And she just really felt like she didn't really care, want to listen. So I kind of feel like she's a little bit to blame for what happened there. But I will say too, with that scene, or the leading up to that scene, that was a very unrealistic time frame of them to be like captured the way they were. You know what I mean? Like they were, yeah, they might have won the race and started going faster, but there's no way they were that much faster to by the time that the other car caught up to them. They were like out of the car already, you know, talking to these people being led to the little thing. You know?
They were already out of the car all the way at the back end of the driveway. I'm like, that's like 6, 7, 10 minutes like of difference.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I 100%
like,
agree
what?
with you on that, Heather. Like that was one of my points is it's like, yeah, they sped ahead and it's 10 minutes worth of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, you didn't get that far ahead of them. There's just no way. Like that was a crazy timeline change there for that. But so that part was a little bit strange to me, but the scene that it led up to, the scene that we got with Jesse Plemons and the other, I guess soldiers, if you want to call them that really was a good payoff for how we got there. But it kind of felt like, well, we know we want this very impactful scene, but we're not entirely sure how we want to get there. So let's just do it this way. That's kind of what that little in-between scene felt like. But aside from that, yeah, that scene was really great. And the character of also Sammy, the guy who played Sammy, I really liked him too, because I feel like he actually was the one trying to be reasonable in most situations. He's kind of like, don't have a good feeling about this, guys. This is a death trap. Let's not do this. But again, his like duty to kind of not leave them there too got him killed, unfortunately. But I just like that he brought that wisdom and that perspective to everybody else's character, not really playing devil's advocate, but sort of just being like, let's just be real about what the situation is and what needs to happen here. And this isn't looking good for us, guys. So let's do something smart here, which most of the time they just didn't want to do. But everything was so, you're just kind of really thrown into the middle of so many situations where war is happening and fighting's going on and all these things that it was jarring, but it felt a little, I guess, realistic that you just don't really have time to emotionally react to some of those things. Like even when Sammy gets shot and they don't realize it till down the road or whatever. And Kirsten Dunst is just kind of like, okay, he's been shot. Let's pull over. Let's, there's no time to emotionally react to it because you're just in the middle of this craziness. And I do feel like in a way that was pretty realistic too. Because when you're in those situations and you're just trying to survive and just be on go mode and, navigate that situation the way that you need to, you have to just think quickly, think on your feet and just go. So I did like that perspective that they gave of that. Although I do think in the moments that they try to show that even though these people are a little bit desensitized to what's happening, they still have those emotions sometimes. Most of the time when they try to do that, I do feel like it was in odd moments of the movie. But I do like the guy who played, what was his name? Hold on. Joel, who was like the partner on the trip or whatever. Wagner Mora is his name. I liked him too. I just think he did a good performance, even though I didn't necessarily agree either with his choices. Like there's not really many people's choices here I agreed with, but I did at least appreciate that he was trying to protect Jessie. He was trying to make sure she was safe and keep her, from getting herself in danger, even though she did many times anyway, things like that. So, and that's another thing too, back to Jessie, that all of the really big situations that they get themselves into is because of her. Like it just is. Even at the end with Kirsten Dunst and what happens to her is because of Jessie. Like that's why she frustrated me so much. Because it's like, we don't know enough of your motive. You're not fleshed out enough. All we know about you is that you just want to do what you want to do in spite of the warnings, and you don't care who it affects. That's the only thing that we see about her character, which, to be fair, she played really well. She was frustrating me. So she did a good job at her performance, but she is just the reason that so many of these bad things happen to this group of people. But that aside, I really did like her and Kirsten Dunst's dynamic together. I think it was a really cool relationship of, you know, I look up to you, you inspire me, I want to be like you. And then Lee, Kirsten Dunst's character, kind of seeing the potential in her, and you could tell she's trying to take her a little bit under her wing, but very cautiously do it. And I liked that dynamic because she sees these things, but she also knows what Jessie is going to go through if she chooses this career and this life. So she's trying to be a little bit removed and just be, this is the facts. This is the facts of what you're getting into if you do this job, but also like is kind of impressed with her at the same time and her work and what she's doing. So it was a cool dynamic because it's like they kind of learned something from each other in a way. So I liked that up until the very end when it felt like none of that mattered. And that was so annoying to me. But again, it speaks to that whole thing of you don't have time to really react in the moment. You're just doing a quick reaction. You don't have time to emotionally think about what's happening. You just do like your instinct and you react. And that kind of does speak to that scene as well, where she just kind of is like, I just want to get the shot. And then Kirsten jumps out and is like, nope. And then, and then she's gone, which was a really weird, abrupt letdown for her character because she's the only one that you're really super invested in, at least for me. So, but that aside, like I said, I like the way that they shot the scenes of them being in the action. I think the loudness of it, the craziness, chaoticness of it all was very well done. And I don't know how realistic it is as far as like, if that's what journalists in that field actually do or how that's done. But I just feel like I kept thinking every time they were shooting something happening in real time with these people in this war, I was like, that's absolutely insane. And I'm so surprised that you're not all in more danger or like more of a target. And I guess you could argue that they're not the ones trying to, attack them or, they have to defend themselves against them or anything like that. But I'm like, they could be shooting these photographs and journaling, like doing their journalism on you and what you've done in this war. So I feel like they'd be bigger targets that way. That they'd just be like, no, we don't want you to report what's actually happening here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that would have been sort of either side wouldn't have been as okay with them being so in their face in the action. But again, maybe that is realistic. I have no idea. I just feel like that's kind of, I don't know. I feel like that would put a bigger target on their back for them to be that close in it and be like, you're shooting pictures of this. You're shooting pictures of me just shooting this guy in the head for no reason. Well, I want to shoot you now so nobody sees that. Like I feel like that's what they would have actually done, but I don't know. Maybe if they're not a direct threat, they don't care. I don't know. But yeah. And it was just this interesting, like almost felt like a post-apocalyptic type of world because even the idea of getting gas at a gas station felt like it was a hassle. And that was an interesting kind of perspective to see too. And also just the desensitized way that like these guys were in the back of that gas station just being hung and like Kirsten Dunst just kind of not batting an eye and the other girl trying to get to the point where she's not either. I don't know. It was just disturbing, I guess. That whole gas station thing was just very disturbing in general. But yeah, I think they were effective in just showing you this very surreal, like, this is what the world could be like if we keep going the direction we're going type of vibe about it. But at the same time, it's, I don't know. I just, they didn't tell as coherent of a story as I wanted. Kind of like what you said, Sterling, about narratively, it kind of feels a little shallow because there was so much potential to get really deep into that kind of thing from the journalism perspective or the journalist's perspective. And they really didn't go as deep as I feel like they could have, given that they're like in the middle of a civil war and they are on their way to the president. You just feel like there would have been a lot more conviction or a lot more firm stances or beliefs on why or talk about why. And they didn't really have that. So that's all I got for now.
Jastin, what about you?
Cool. So I guess just from the outset, just some of the things I enjoyed. That opening scene with the bomber and the moment where Kirsten Dunst's character, I told myself I'm going to get better about saying character names and stuff and
Lee,
not the actors' names, but Lee, that whole thing when Lee was taking the photos and everything, and the way that was shot with the silence and how you see the photos and all this violence and chaos, but you're not hearing any sound. You're not hearing anything. That was excellent.
That was really cool, actually.
That was shot. That was just an excellent, to me, way to start the movie. So that was like really cool. Just very artistic, very interesting the way that was done. And then it kind of also captured the essence of what this Lee character is, who is a character who, and understand that this is a dystopian society. So I want to warn against too much. Again, this is a hypothetical. So I want to warn too much of trying to compare it to just the way America is now and saying, oh, I wonder if we would do that. Understand that this is dystopian. A lot of years have passed. We're kind of past the point of all of these reasons and things and stuff like that. And we have been at war, at this civil war for quite some time. You know, in the opening, the president gets up there and says, you know, we're on the precipice of winning this whole thing. Like this whole thing is about to be over. So understand, you're coming in as a viewer on the tail end of this. You're coming in on where, you know, the lines have already been drawn. We've been warring for a while. There are already people used to this already. There are already people who have isolated themselves and are acting like none of this is going on because they just don't want to be involved. You know, you heard that exposited by several characters. You know, there are family and there are people. We visited a town where they had sort of kept away from what was going on in the war and just like, well, we just try not to talk about it and we just try to live. So I think it's important to understand where you were dropped into this movie and understand that about how the narrative is positioned, because normally we wouldn't do this, right? Like normally you'd start and there'd be text and it would say some shit about, well, when the president, when Texas made this decision and decided to, whatever the situation is, have slaves, and then the rest of these states decided not to, this incited but that's not really what we were doing here. You know, we were already kind of in a dystopian society that was already well into this thing. So like when we come in and we're looking at Kirsten Dunst, this is clearly like a character who has been doing this for a long time. She's been documenting this for a long time. She's famous for this. And the one thing that I noticed right away about her character is that she's really desensitized to everything that's happening. Like, there are bodies blowing up and people getting shot and stuff like that. And I mean, without batting an eye, without anything, she is just clicking these photos and getting these in perfect position, getting these shots and timing herself and avoiding danger. And she very much feels like a character who they've been fighting so long, she's just desensitized to it, just almost can't even feel anything. You know, the rush, sometimes you even look at her facials and you wonder if there's even kind of that rush of excitement, like, oh man, this is happening. Sometimes even when stuff was seeming very stressful, she just sort of had this poker face kind of calmness to her demeanor and what she was doing. So yeah, and on one respect, she's a veteran. She's been doing this a long time. But I think there was a real message here about how violence and just being, and when it's so just in your face all the time for years and years and years, just how desensitizing that can become to just be around for so long. So I think that there's kind of this real message in there about that. And that message is pivotal when you look at the Jessie character and her journey, because Jessie starts as just kind of this person, you know, young, aspiring journalist, big dreams, idolizes Lee, wants to be like her, wants to be just like her and everything like that. But what I liked about the Jessie character is, if you pay attention, as this movie is going along, she's getting more and more desensitized to what's happening. And it's more and more about the thrill of this, being in the middle of this and snapping these photos and everything like that, even to the risk of her own life. It's almost like this rush is the rush that she's feeling, the excitement that she's feeling, but also she's starting not to feel, you know what I mean? And I think that there was this big message in this about the not feeling, right? The not caring about the sides, the not feeling for your fellow human, the not feeling, you know, even though we're looking at it at the perspective of the journalist, we see a lot of examples of people not feeling. You know, Jesse Plemons wasn't feeling when he blasted those people. You know, that character wasn't feeling when he was blasting those people. When we went to get gas and there are people being hung at the gas station, not a lot of feelings going on with those people. And see, this is what I mean by the reasons weren't given to you on purpose, because I think the danger of giving a reason is that then it invites you to have a view on it and to have a different political or stance on it. So then what do you naturally do if a reason is given? You take a side. The movie doesn't want you to take a side. The movie wants you to remain neutral. And the most efficient way to do that sometimes is, rather than trying to come up with sides and hope that you can see the significance of both sides and remain neutral, I think I get what the director and the writers were doing. I get not giving you those things, because then you will be more inclined to take a side. I mean, that's just what we do. That's just what people do. And if you say you won't, you're not being honest. If there were reasons given, you are just naturally inclined to either agree with those reasons or disagree with them. And your agreeing or disagreeing is going to be probably based on what? Your views, your political views, your views on morality, your views on religion, etc., etc., etc. So what better way to avoid that than to not give you those views, to not give you those reasons, to not really focus on those things, because then you as an audience member just have to absorb it. You don't get to know who's the right side, because the point is that there is no right side. So I get what the director was trying to do. You know, I totally got what the aim was with that. But as we're going along with this narrative, and I agree with you too, Heather, like, I liked all the characters. I thought that this was a good group of characters. You know, you had Stephen Henderson, who played Sammy, that wily kind of veteran. He's been doing this a long time, doesn't like to take too many chances, but knows his stuff and knows what he's doing. So he's kind of like that vet, that old school vet that's on the team. And then Joel, however they would prefer we pronounce that, I liked his character too. Like, he seemed like somebody who he very much was about getting the big story. He was kind of that character. He wanted the big scoop. He wanted that interview with the president. He wanted kind of the big story. So to me, he sort of was that kind of journalist. But he wasn't like Lee in that he had just almost had become so desensitized. He had just almost lost just all of his humanity. You know, he definitely didn't look at things the same way as her. He wasn't as much of a skeptic. He was more of an optimist. You know, that's sort of how he treated things. More of what was happening when it was pivotal affected him. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's what that character was. That character was kind of not the complete antithesis of Lee, but definitely he was more, if Lee is the skeptic, he was more the optimist, you know.
Now, if I may, I just wanted to add really quick to that. Like, I agree with you. I think that he was supposed to be the more like, you know, let's make the best of it kind of situation until it got super real with that one scene. But I feel like what my disconnect with the Jessie character with all of it is she was basically, by the end of this movie, as desensitized as Kirsten Dunst was, or as Lee was, you know? And I feel like that it was such a quick change for it being like her first big thing that she's done, and everything that she saw, I just feel like she just made the quickest turn into that feeling nothingness. And it's like, but even Joel's character wasn't that desensitized to it. You know what I mean? Like, even at the end, yeah, he was definitely pissed off, and you could tell he was mad and angry and just, you know, whatever. But she just felt like she got there so fast. And I think that was the disconnect for me, because I'm just like, you don't even see the arc of it. Really, you just kind of see like she suddenly is like, she's trying to get her shots. She's trying to do her job and doing it, whatever. And then from being in a pit of dead bodies, you know, it being like almost like your life taken from you. And then going through all the streets with all of the, you know, every weapon you could think of and all of that. And then she's just, by the end of this movie, like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, that's just kind of what it felt like. And maybe that's not what it was going for. And maybe I'm the only one that saw that. But I think that was kind of why I just felt like she didn't have an arc, because it just felt like went from one thing to the other so quick in this story. When you see these other two more experienced journalists, one of them already, you could tell she's so jaded because she's been doing it for so long. And then the other guy fighting so hard to still be optimistic, even though he's also been doing it for so long. You know what I mean?
Okay, cool. And I respect that perspective. I'll just say that I looked at her a little bit differently. Like, I feel like if Lee is so you've got Sammy, who's the vet, seen it all, done it all, and he's kind of got his own way of how he feels about this, wants to take risk, wants to still be in the game, but understands that there are some risks not worth taking. He's that guy. Then you have Lee, who is more the skeptic. She's been desensitized by a lot of it, but we still saw that there were shreds of humanity. She took that picture of Sammy. She did at first, but then after some reflection, after some thought, what did she do? She deleted that picture. She tried to say she didn't care about what happens to Jesse and everything like that. At first she kind of gave off this kind of, well, if you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. I kind of don't care. But as the movie was going along, we saw that there was more to her than that, right? There was this kind of other side. Same thing with Joel's character, right? Yeah, he was more the optimist than Lee was, but when the going got tough, and like you kind of said, Heather, when shit got real, we also saw that anguish and that panic and that, oh my God, this is horrible to him. So,
yeah.
You saw that other side. So when I look at Jesse, this is what I saw. And, I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm right or anything, but I did see the character differently. All the other three characters have something in common. They're much older adults, right? They've been doing this a long time. When this whole thing started, they've seen a lot of it. They were adults when this started and they've been through this and everything. So I think their perspective is going to be a little bit different. They're going to be affected a little bit different than somebody going through this in their late teens and into early 20s. I just think somebody that young and that inexperienced, things, the impression that it has on her and how it changes her, I just think is going to be drastically different. Not saying that that's the same in every situation, but I do think narratively that was the situation here. She was the open palette. She was kind of the open book that came in here. Yes, she knew that she wanted to do this job. She had dreams of being as good as somebody like Lee, but this experience changed her more than it did any of the other characters. And I think a lot of that was youth, inexperience, and she's more impressionable than any of them. So I felt like as the narrative is going along, you saw that she had a lot of humanity, and at first couldn't even handle just being at a war scene and shaking up and, freezing and everything like that. And they talked to her about how you can't be like that. You can't shut down when this has to happen. You got to be able to let those things go. Lee talked to her about those things. And I think that what happened throughout this entire experience is that it was kind of like she sort of became like a worse version of Lee. I think by the end of the movie, she's a worse version of Lee, where even that humanity that we saw Lee have, she doesn't have by the end of it, because by the end, all of these experiences, all of this trauma, all of these things going on, and then the rush of it and how she sort of kind of became, I think in a way, sort of drawn or addicted to that rush, the excitement of being in the war, being in the moment of taking these photos and everything like that. And as the movie goes along, you see her become more and more desensitized to what's happening, just more and more, little by little. And then by the time we get to those last few conflict scenes, Now she's snapping pictures, but notice how she was being more reckless. She was really getting up in there. She was really not being careful. She was really just jumping out, in front of soldiers and everything like that. She was infinitely more reckless than our other photographers were. So, and I think that was on purpose. I think it was to show how at first she went from being timid and not able to really get out there and kind of scared to get out there to just full on, I'm out here now. I'm out here. I'm doing this. And this is happening and everything like that. And so while I agree that the scene at the end was abrupt in the way that happened and how Kirsten died and everything, I do understand from a narrative standpoint why it happened that way. And then when Jesse just captured her picture at the end, it was a callback to a conversation they had where Jesse was like, if I died, would you take the picture of me? And Lee was like, yeah, I would take the picture. So it was a little ironic. It was kind of a little foreshadowing when we had that conversation earlier. But at the same time, I also think it's a message about what can happen in a situation like this. War affects people differently, but think about how this would affect young people. Like seeing this every day and seeing all these bodies dying and seeing all this, just like imagine not being an adult and going through this and driving into towns and seeing bodies and stuff like that. Or, these journalists opening up these magazines and all you're seeing is dead bodies, or look at all the pile of bodies in Texas. Look at all the piles of bodies here. Look at all the piles of bodies there. So what would that do to people? How would that affect young people seeing dead bodies every day? We are people who have lived through wars and stuff like that. And yeah, we've lived through some things, through some conflicts, through some wars, 9/11, all of that kind of stuff. But imagine driving to school or going anywhere and just seeing dead bodies every day. Like, imagine what that might do to you. You know what I mean? Imagine what seeing something like that and seeing something like that captured in the media daily, monthly, reading magazines, wherever these pictures are going to be. Just imagine what that would do to a person, And I think there was a very clear kind of message that they were trying to say with that. And so by the end of the movie, when she does what she does, and at this point she's not feeling anything, and like that this has made such an impression on her that she has had to completely shut that part off, almost like survival instinct, right? Because captured by the Jesse Plemons character and near death on that situation, watching all these people die in all these situations, and then being taught that you have to not have that in order to be the best photographer, the best journalist you can possibly be. So, to me, it felt kind of appropriate that by the end of the movie, we have created this monster, the war, the unrelenting nature of it all, the sort of the kind of desensitized nature you have to be this journalist and this photographer and everything like that. I think that's why that character became that way. So I don't think by the end it was Jesse justified in doing this. Of course she wasn't, but I think it's important to understand how this happened, how this monster was created, how all of these different people, all these different monsters were created. And just before I let you go, Sterling, another scene that I really wanted to talk about was the scene where And I'm calling it the are you retarded sniper scene. That was a really good scene too, because you know, you hear this gunfire and you've got these snipers and these soldiers and they're laying there prone, shooting back at whatever's firing at them. And then, you know, Joel and Lee and them come up and Joel is like, hey, like, what's going on here? And the guy's kind of like, well, are you stupid? You know, somebody's essentially, he was like, somebody's firing at us and we are trying to shoot them. And then he's like, well, what side are you on? Like, what side are you fighting for? Why is this happening? You know, what side are you? Are you the Western forces? Are you the, you know, he was kind of saying all of those things. And notice how none of those questions got answered. And I think that's kind of important. Like, none of those questions got answered because, and the guy looks at him like, man, what are you talking about? We're being shot at. You know, what do you know? Like, we're just trying to shoot somebody and shoot them. This is not about my viewpoint right now. I'm just trying to survive. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're just trying to not be shot, you know? So I thought that was an interesting scene too. And then how that all played out and everything like that. It was a funny scene. And I forget the actor who looked at him and was like, is something wrong with you, man? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what side am I on? These people are shooting at us. So, but I think all of that was on purpose. Yeah, we could have answered some questions. That soldier could have been like, oh yeah, I'm Western forces and I believe this, that, and the other. But I just go back to what I said earlier. That wasn't what this movie was about. The movie didn't want you to take a side. It wanted you to be neutral. It wanted you to just see all of this and go, well, damn, like, was anything worth getting to this point? And even like the final attack on the president was interesting because even though we killed the president and these soldiers are happy and they're celebratory and, you know, the lasting image is these soldiers all posing with this president that they've killed, like they've overcome the tyrant and everything like that. But I couldn't help but think about all of those Washington monuments and things that just got destroyed and what was happening to Washington, D.C. and the White House, you know, pieces of the White House getting blown up and all this kind of stuff. And like at the end of that, it just almost kind of felt like, damn, you know, like who really won? Like, look at all of this destruction and chaos that occurred just for this end result. And you just got the feeling that even if that president is killed and removed, what's to stop the next leader from rising or doing the same thing? Or, you just wondered if anything was really solved killing this one person. You know, it didn't feel like that was truly the end of the conflict. And I think it should feel like that because, you know, who really wins in these things? You know, it just feels like there's always going to be losers. There's always going to be people killed. There's always going to be these things. But like, it's a very scary thought that, you know, that could the United States arrive to this at some point. And like I said earlier, I wouldn't put it past the United States. I wouldn't put it past some extreme things to happen. I can't say that it's impossible for this to happen. I wouldn't put it past it. And if you were to ask me, will all the reasons for it be justified? Nah, man. I just saw people raid a Capitol building and those reasons weren't justified. Like, man, America, man, we be on some misinformed, stupid, crazy stuff. So I don't know, man. Like, you know, maybe it was filmed by somebody who isn't from America, but man, there were some people in it, just like the Jesse Plemons character you talked about, Heather. There are some people in it that sure don't seem too unbelievable to some people we've seen in this country. I could see some people doing that, in this country. I've read about some people doing it and killing people and stuff like that. And it's just because of what? You know what I mean? For what, really? So I think it was just important for this movie to say, yeah, this country's at civil war, but really it's to show that despite the reasons for getting there, what's worse is what could potentially happen. The desensitizing to violence and what it can do to the youth and the more impressionable people that we have growing up here. The way that people can take sides and then literally justify what they do and just lack humanity. I just think it was more about those things than really it was anything else. So, and that's the part of the film that I appreciated. I think the most was just, I feel like those messages were there. I feel like those messages were the aim. And I feel like that's what the movie was trying to get to. And I promised earlier, I keep saying it's the last thing. This is the last thing, but I did want to talk about the ending and what I wanted more from it. I do feel like at the end, when you're just seeing the men, the people, the soldiers posing with the president, I think what I needed was a scene of the aftermath. I think it would have been meaningful if you saw what happened after that, or if the idea was, hey, there's going to be another political leader and really it's not going to fix anything. I really wish there was a scene to have let me see that play out, or to really put that message across, or maybe a scene years later and we show Jesse and what's going on with her, or is she, does she say anything at Lee's funeral? Is she even at the funeral? Is she just trying to get another scoop? It would have been interesting to see kind of a little bit of the aftermath of what happened after some of these things. So I feel like the way it ended, it was just like, damn, Lee is dead. Okay, president is dead. Movie is over. You know what I mean? So I feel like maybe if there could have been something, just one more scene to kind of tie all of that together, kind of in a meaningful way. And I think you still could have stayed within the messages and had that, but it did feel really abrupt, just very abrupt ending that I don't think completely worked for me.
Are you done? I'm not saying like you've been going too long. I was just like wondering, is it my turn?
No, you're good.
Okay. No, yeah, you paused. That's why I'm asking. To comment on that though, I mean, personally, I disagree with you about that part of the end, about needing something of the aftermath, because to me, if the motivation or the reason why it starts doesn't matter, the after effects don't matter either. That's why, to me, the why is important the whole way through. I think aftermath, what does that matter if you don't know why it started? Because what if, like, now the aftermath is just America goes back to being America? Because maybe it was justified. And that's why I think that also where this movie betrays itself. You talked about how people have their motivations. And like they're very big on their motivations. That's where this movie also betrays itself, because if these people were righteous or felt like they were righteous in their cause, at no point would they have been, well, no, it doesn't matter. What's happening doesn't matter. I'm just doing this anyway. No, they'd find every reason they could to be self-righteous and say their cause. We as Americans love to do that. You love to triumph your side, your point of view, where you're from with it all. You know, people in America, whenever they feel like they're justified in everything, love saying why they're justified in it. That's the American way of handling things. Like, oh, why am I being racist and Nazi-like? Well, this is why. And then they love telling you why. This movie betrays that. And that's why I don't feel like it really resonates as a whole with any of that. So I kept trying to look it up to see if I could just get a timeline, if there was even a sort of timeline based on everything with this. You know, they just say that the president was on his third term. And based on apparently radio excerpts throughout the movie and all this other stuff, apparently the war starts because he refuses to step down after a second term and just goes on to a third term. And that's what starts all this. So theoretically speaking, the amount of time from when this war began to where it's at now would have had to have been within 4 years, just because of the way terms, the way they work, you know. So it would have had to have been less than 4 years from when this war started to this movie, assuming he'd be at the end of his third term, you know. But also going to what you were saying, though, with a lot of this stuff, I mean, I guess it's one of the reasons why I had such issues with these characters and the way they put them in situations and stuff like that. Just this idea that this society is just like, hey, if you wear something like a press vest, you are unquestioned and you are just press. And that universally across America, everyone is magically okay with you and lets you watch and do anything you want. Like
they're not even okay with that now.
It's incredibly weird, especially when there are people in this movie going, hey, you want to take pictures of me committing war crimes? That'd be awesome. Watch me do some war crimes. Make sure you get a good shot of it. Like, why would they just let them in?
That's how insanely mad that it got. They didn't care anymore.
But that's the thing, though. If you're committing war crimes and whatnot and all of that type of stuff, you're not going to let people just roll up and go, oh, you can just watch this because you're press. You've got no way of knowing they're press. You're not going to trust them. You're not going to go, oh, you got press vests. Nobody can get those, even though we just had enough extra ones to just hand one to a little girl with no qualifications or no reasoning behind it. We're just handing these out with no actual verification of anything. And people are just going to let you get in the middle of their military exercises and military maneuvers and whatnots. No, you'd be so mistrusting of them. You'd automatically go, I think you're spying on us for the other side, or you're this for the other side, and you're just going to shoot us in the back of the head when we're doing this other shit. Why would you just automatically go, no, you're neutral as fuck? Especially at the end of the movie, when they are making the final assault on the president of the United States, and they go, no, you can be right there with us in the front line assault. That's like going, hey, we're about to go assassinate Osama bin Laden. Let's make sure we have some reporters with us while we do it. That's not fucking happening. Especially not in the middle. Like in the middle of the front part of the assault. That's not happening in any fucking universe like that. Especially when you don't know who these people are. They're just walking up and going, hey, we're press. Let us go with you. And they just go, well, you got the vest. I mean, I can't argue that. That's fucking nonsense. And it's just to keep us neutral. This movie wants you to be neutral because to me, like I said, it felt like it didn't have anything else to say. Because fundamentally speaking, that's not how people work. That's not how war works. You don't have a war going on in a country and it just be like, well, you know, some people just, they're this and some people are that. But there's a war. That's not what this would fucking be. Especially the middle of the fucking country. Because the way this whole thing is built is that the people attacking the president are from the opposite side of the fucking country. The way war works, the entire middle of the country is fucking torched. Because the two people at the opposite ends fight through the middle. That's what happens. But this movie wanted to be like, nah, but that's not it. They just magically transport from fucking Colorado to Washington, D.C. and don't touch a damn thing in the middle. What's that? Just to have these things, just so they can be ambiguous about everything? I don't buy it. Like, that felt lazy to me. Because if you're really trying to search for this altruistic thing of, you know, war, like the horrors of war and how it can taint the soul and all this other stuff, I think the better version of that movie is going through middle America and looking at the wasteland that would exist. And how the two opposite ends of the country have been shredding and tearing apart the middle part of the country because that's where they're fighting. They're not fighting where they're at. They're fighting in the middle. And that's the decimation. That's the true casualty and the true cost of war. That the two opposite sides are just not destroying each other. They're destroying what's in between them. The innocent people that weren't a part of it. Because that's actually what a civil war would have been in this instance. Because when you've got California and Texas and Washington, D.C. on the other side, you know what country's fucked? Tennessee. Because it's just right in the middle of that shit. Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Illinois. Those are the countries that would get fucked by that. But it's a fundamental misunderstanding of, A, how America would be built and how a war would happen with it. And I think once again, too, it's like I said, nobody would give these journalists such unrestrained and just ultimate access to everything. Like, you know, the scene you were talking about with the sniper, Jastin, when they was like, oh, are you Western forces? And they're like, are you serious? Why would that matter right now? Dude, they'd fucking tell you. Also, it'd be on their uniform. They had uniforms. You did get the people that didn't have uniforms and they were wearing tropical shirts. I think that was this movie's way of saying, oh, they're the Florida people. Because that's honestly how I think people from Florida would go to war, wearing Tommy Bahama shirts. So that tracks. That's probably the most accurate thing this movie did in my eyes, was that Florida people had Tommy Bahama. But like outside of no, that's what you would do, because if you're in a civil war, especially, you're going to be self-righteous about it. If you're committing war crimes, you're going to be self-righteous about it. Nobody's going to commit.
Some people, but I don't think everybody would. I mean,
people committing war crimes,
talk to soldiers and stuff like that, and they're like, "Man, I'm just here because I needed money," or
but that's not
I'm just here because
that's not a civil war, though. You're not staying home and doing it. But
this is a made up, just created civil war based on. I just don't think every soldier, every person fighting would have the same view.
No, they wouldn't. But especially in this war, because there's 4 different factions. You would theoretically have 4 different points of view that they never get into. But the thing is, especially if you're in a civil war, though, and you're actively participating in it, because these were militia battles. These weren't grand orchestrated, maneuvers and scenarios. This was militia fighting. Like, you're not going and joining, the fucking 15 people in the militia just because you're like, oh, I guess it's what I got to do. Like, this would be infinitely more, well, it's that weird form of more organized, but also more disorganized than the original Civil War. Because there wouldn't be clear lines. Especially, like I said, the people committing war crimes, those are the ones that are going to be the most self-righteous. Nobody's out there committing war crimes because they've just, they're stuck in it. Like, when those people are sitting there shooting prisoners, unarmed prisoners, that's a war crime. They're not going to do that if they don't believe in what they're doing. And if you believe in what you're doing, especially in that scenario, you take every chance you can to justify it. That's what everybody does in these situations. It's the self-righteousness of it all, especially like when it comes to things like that, where you're just executing, whether or not you view them as innocent or not, but when you're just executing people in those scenarios, everybody gives their justifications for it. Nobody's just going to sit there and go, I just did it. Like, that wouldn't be a thing. And that's why, like, to me, that, like, none of that shit ever tracked. When you get to the Jesse Plemons character and all this other stuff, like, that was the weirdest character to me. Whilst it's probably the best scene in the movie, it's also one of the weirdest characters to me because he's like, you get that xenophobic American, that character that, we all know or have seen in our lives, but they're doing it from the point of view that it's also like, it's not a split America. If somebody is that ingrained with something, they're choosing a side. Those are the people that are choosing sides instantly. So why wouldn't he be like, yeah, because I fight for this America. All these other people, you would view the other factions in the war as going against the America that you are wanting to save. No matter which faction you are, you would look at the other factions as fighting against you. If you're that like xenophobic style of person. So why wouldn't he be self-righteous with it? And also, what was the older guy's name? Sammy? Yeah, how did he get shot? Because he got shot in the front left side. Carl was never shot from that angle. Where he got shot, he physically could have never been shot with what they showed us. Because the one person that shot at that car was shooting from behind. He got shot front left. So that also didn't track, and that annoyed me. And that's one of those things, what I've said in previous episodes. Your movie, because I was not being entertained, I was having massive issues with this movie. I had no reason to not nitpick your fucking scene right there. I had no reason to not sit there in this fucking theater going, where Sammy was shot doesn't make any sense. No one could have actually shot him there. They were not shot from that direction. Therefore, Sammy should be fine. And this whole scene is useless to me. That's how disinterested I was at that point in this movie. And that's the best scene in the movie, and I'm that fucking checked out. That I'm doing my own fucking version of CSI and doing fucking trajectory and all that other shit. trying to trace where that bullet would have come from. That was that magic Magneto bullet shot from behind the car, went in front of the car, turned around and went into him. Like he's fucking Roger Rabbit or some shit. I'm way angrier than I mean to be right now. I don't know why. I got fired up at some point, and I don't really know what fired me up, but I got fired up. I don't know why. I'll calm my tone down a little bit because it's actually betraying how I feel. That's the bad thing about it.
Because you're actually just indifferent.
I don't care enough. Like my voice and like my energy is betraying like my feelings because I don't care. I sound like I care so fucking much.
You sound like you care to me.
I do. I'll admit that. I sound like I care. You know how much I'm going to think about this movie when we end this episode? None.
You're so frustrated. You're so indifferent that you're frustrated at your indifference.
That could be it. But like I was in the middle of talking about that bullet and shit, and I was like, I sound passionate as fuck right now.
Why am I angry?
And I am not. Because like I said, we're going to move on to Abigail, and I'm going to stop thinking about this movie. I'm only going to think about it if people bring it up and like go, hey, did you see Civil War? That's the only time I'm going to think about this. Why did I get so fired up? I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm going last in spoilers. I don't typically go last in spoilers.
Can't handle it. You cannot handle it.
I can't. Apparently I overflow.
Oh, man.
Like I just sit here and get antsy and I go, I want to speak. So it just explodes into like a firing fury of words.
I mean, the only thing I wanted to add to about like that end scene is I feel like what I would have liked was, even if it's not like a full on, like has to be long conversation, but when they finally get to the president and Joel's like, you know, do you have a quote for us? You know, that whole thing. They went such a long journey for him to just be okay with the quote of "Don't let them kill me." And I get that it was supposed to be like at that point, Joel was so just mad and angry at everything that had happened and just frustrated at the entire situation that he was probably just like, whatever, I don't care anymore. Almost like he lost the reason for his journey along the journey kind of thing. But I think it would have been better served to have him trying to justify or something, you know, instead of just that being all like that he said. So I don't know. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
What I'll add to that, Heather, is I would have appreciated that if at the end of this movie that's, you know, about journalism and photography, if they actually had the picture that was quote unquote taken at the end of the movie at an angle that would have actually been possible based on where the little girl was standing in that room. Man, that picture was from a downward angle, like she's all fucking 7 foot tall. She's 4'8" and taking it from the middle of her chest. It should have been a straight on picture. It should not have been at a downward angle. And once again, that bothered me too. That's once again goes to my point of I was so distracted by this shit in this movie because the movie didn't give me any reason to not, that I was also bothered by the photography angles of the photography people in this movie.
It was easy for you to find things to pick at because you weren't invested.
This movie didn't give me a reason to not nitpick it. So yeah, I'm going to go Alex Garland. Maybe next time have a photographer help you with that instead of just having the camera on a tripod and making a still image out of the film you were shooting. Just a thought. And also, just real quick too, just for clarification's sake, this movie is written and directed by Alex Garland and no one else. He is the only person listed as a writing or that got a writing credit on this. And two, earlier with what you said with that one scene, Jastin, I do also want to clarify that that is a direct quote from that scene. It wasn't just something that wasn't verbiage that Jastin just said for no reason.
Which one? Sorry.
Wait, what are you talking about?
The sniper scene, what you called the sniper scene.
Oh,
I don't really
the name
feel
of
like
the sniper
saying
scene.
yes. The word that starts with an R, relating to people that are considered mentally. Damn, I don't even know how to fucking phrase this. Traditionally, we would have said mentally handicapped. Although I don't think that
the
is
title
still
you
preferred
gave,
phrasing.
the title you gave for that scene that you talked about with the snipers, Jastin, that's the word he's talking about.
Oh, yeah, and the reason why I said that, I could clarify it. The reason why I said that is because in the actual scene,
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
sniper
saying.
looked at the other character and said, "Are you retarded or something?" So that's just what I remembered from him saying. I couldn't remember the actor's name, but that's what I remembered him saying from that scene. So that's why
Yes.
I said that. But yeah, those weren't my own words or anything like that.
Yes.
That was a direct quote from that sniper, and I don't think I said that. So yeah, thanks for clarifying that. But that was a direct quote from the sniper.
Exactly. And that's all I was trying to say is you were quoting the line from the scene. It wasn't just you going, that's what I call it.
No, not at all.
That's the only reason why I brought it up was just clarifying. Yes. Like you said, that was a direct quote and that's why that was said. Outside of that, I'm done with this movie. Do you guys have any more thoughts about this movie? Or can I purge this from my mind?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
On that note, a little fun sound for the next movie. Once again, we are going to go recommendation or fuck me. We're going to go spoiler-free recommendations and scores and then into a more spoiler-centric section with time codes still in the description, all for Abigail. And with all of that, Heather, what are your spoiler-free thoughts about Abigail?
Spoiler-free thoughts. I mostly liked this. I think there were some aspects of it that, maybe could have been done a little bit more tight or clean, maybe. I don't know. But for the most part, I like the idea of this being like a home invasion thriller mixed with a, vampire horror situation. I think that's a really cool mix to do. And I actually had not seen the preview or the trailer for this movie until maybe a couple weeks ago. And so I was just kind of like, oh, like this actually looks really interesting. So that being said, I wouldn't say I was disappointed with this movie. I do think that this, again, is a movie where the performances really help this movie be better. The story itself is interesting enough, but backed by the performances of most of these characters, it really showcases a lot of different dynamics and mixing of genres of movies, like, again, thriller, horror, and some action. I think it does kind of mix all of those really well. I think it's unfortunate parts of this that were predictable given the nature of knowing what this movie is. But I do think, the girl who plays Abigail, I think her name is Alicia Weir. She was fantastic. I think she was excellent in this movie. And I was trying to figure out where I knew her from. She's Matilda in the new Matilda movie. I was like, oh, that's why.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, I was like, she looks familiar and I can't figure out why.
Ooh.
She's Matilda. Yeah. So she's very versatile. And for that, respect, because She was a completely different character in this movie. And she's also from Ireland. So good on her. She's very good already at like 14, 15 years old. But yeah, I really thought she was excellent. And because of what this movie is, her character needed to be really good. Her character needed to really draw you in. And she was so good at doing that. So I'm really glad that her performance stuck the landing. And I also liked Melissa Barrera in this a lot. I think her character was relatable, felt like a real person for the most part. So I really liked her too. And I'm always a fan of Catherine Newton, who played Sammy in this. I think I feel like she's kind of like the horror queen right now. She's in all of the horror movies these days, I feel like. But she's great. She always brings a really good performance. Yeah, there's a lot this movie has going for it, but I do think that I was surprised at how this movie was paced because it kind of during maybe like the last act of the film, like it just sort of felt longer than it should have felt, I think. I don't know. Or maybe it was somewhere in the middle. I don't know. There was a stretch of the movie that felt like I'm surprised we're still in this part of the movie. You know what I mean? So I feel like that was, if I had to really give some criticism up front, it's probably a little bit the pacing of the film. But I liked the idea and the concept of what this movie was. I liked the way that all the characters played off of each other for the most part. And yeah, mostly I loved Abigail's character. She was great. So yeah, they made a really good, like, kind of modern version of, you know, what this story is supposed to be and who this character is supposed to be. And it's really good. Like, I think they did a lot of things right with this movie. And I don't think, I wouldn't say I was disappointed with this movie.
Jastin, what about you?
Yeah, I thought this movie was a lot of fun. So, I mean, I think that if there was one word to describe it, I think it was really fun. I thought that for the most part, it was funny. I think that all of the actors in this, you know, kind of like the last movie, I think every actor that was in this showed up, played the role that they were supposed to, handle business as far as what their characters were supposed to be. So I think that it was just so well executed by all of the actors as far as the comedic timing, how characters were interacting with each other. All of that was great. And I liked just some of the narrative choices that this made. Like, I think that some of the choices that it made as far as how to do certain things, like it's following the rules, like the movie exposits, but it made some different decisions on how it would exposit things. And I think that really made a difference for the film. Like, for instance, at the beginning, the way that they used sort of this game to sort of exposit a little bit about every character, I thought that was a fun way to do a fun, more creative way to do an exposition dump than I see in a lot of movies. You know, I thought that they did a good job with little things like that, just revealing things here and there. I guess this is a vampire movie. I mean, I guess it's enough about it and the subject matter and ultimately what we're doing. I guess you can say it's a vampire movie. And if it is, can we have more vampire movies like this, please? Ones that are a little more thoughtful, a little more creative, and not where, like, we've got Dracula rolling around on a boat and a bunch of stupid characters. And, you know, it's just like, or what was the one where Nicolas Cage was a vampire? The
Renfield.
Yeah, the ha ha funny, the movie I forgot about. The ha ha
Renfield,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah, you know, the ha ha funny, and then weird cop character doing dumb things movie. Like, I mean, this is probably the first vampire movie I've seen in a long time. And I was like, damn, I liked it. Like, it wasn't, you know, it knew what it was. It had an identity and it stuck by that. And so and on top of that, it delivered with gore. It delivered with violence. It was bloody, but it was like a bloody, fun, good time. You know what I mean? The point wasn't to necessarily gross you or anything like that. It was kind of that bloody humor. You know what I mean? It's bloody, but it's bloody mainly for the purpose of comedy in a lot of ways and stuff like that. Now that doesn't mean that the movie doesn't have some fierce moments and some moments that are pretty brutal, and there's some good fighting, and there's some like, oh my God, moments that happened to his face, or, you know, whatever the case may be. It has moments like that too, but all of that serves to me as an entertaining movie. So I thought that, and then the way the story plays out, I thought that it moved rather well. And I want to say the movie's an hour 48, something like that. I think it's almost an hour and a half. And I thought that it moved well to just be this movie where we're in one place primarily. And I think it was written well enough. And sometimes when you put all these characters in one place and we're trying to figure this thing out, or we're trying to do this thing, sometimes the movie can be, if it's not written well and not paced well, it can seem really repetitive. It can seem like we're not moving. It can seem like, and I don't know. I just never felt like it wasn't doing something that was at least interesting or fun, or a character was saying something funny, or something was happening to move the narrative along. And sometimes that can be hard to do when you've kind of we've got all these characters trapped in one place and we have to do something. That can be sometimes a difficult thing to write and keep interesting. And I think for the most part, this movie does it. I do think that when it comes to now that I've called it a vampire movie, when it comes to the vampire elements, there are some things where we take some liberties. We don't explain specifically what kind of vampires these are. You know, we don't know all the rules. We don't know to every extent what the powers are, different things like that. You know, we don't know everything. And so I guess there are portions where it's like, okay, and I guess in a way it does give the movie some freedom to sort of write itself in or out of situations because it doesn't explain all the rules. But what I will say, though, is that I think this movie gets away with it more because it didn't feel like not explaining because we don't have a better idea. It felt like it was trying to put you in the position of the characters. And so in a way, the characters know that we're dealing with a vampire, and they're just pulling from all of these different references from things that they know, but don't fully understand what all the rules are either. So in that way, it does help the narrative because you are thinking the same things they are. You're experiencing it as they are experiencing it. And so on some ways, it does help the narrative. But if I want to nitpick, it took some liberties, I think, at the end and the third act because it didn't fully explain all the rules to you. So it can kind of do it at once. You know, I can bite this person and nothing happens. I can bite this person and they turn. You know, you can kind of do some things and not fully explain it. And normally it might be kind of a sin, but I feel like I forgave it in this movie because not forgave. I mean, I deducted points, but I guess I didn't deduct a lot of points because I feel like even though I didn't know everything, even though I didn't know everything, it didn't completely ruin the narrative for me.
Well, I want to explore that part just real quick before you move on. With that, do you think it's because essentially the characters in this movie had roughly the same understanding of what vampires are through their respective media or culture or whatever that we have in ours now?
Yes.
So are they breaking rules? Maybe, but it's also, what are the rules? Like the vaguest of rules are all still there. So it's like that.
Yeah.
The difference of if in this universe, it's not legend, it's fact. Vampires exist. That it's our culture says this. It turns out only this, and this were real. These other things were made up. So they found that out just like as we did in the movie. So it's that, trial and error type of thing that, that's why while you noticed it, like Heather said, and you agreed to, that it just didn't detach you from the film.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. I think that's exactly how I felt about it.
It's kind of like if you woke up tomorrow and your neighbor was a vampire, you would probably go through the same chain of events of, does garlic work? Does silver work? Does crosses work? Does sunlight work? Like you'd have the same checklist of, does this work?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's why it didn't completely ruin it for me, because it did feel like maybe something that would happen. And then the way, like you said, the narrative checks out with them doing the trial and error, the not knowing drove some of the narrative and some of the choices that the characters were making. So it's not all bad. It's a rule, it's a rule we sometimes talk about, but it wasn't necessarily executed poorly in this film. So I have to at least give it credit in that regard, Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I just wanted to explore that just a little bit because that's not really a spoiler thing. That's vampires in general. Just before you moved on, I just wanted to explore that.
No, that was good. That was good. And so, I think, that might have been like the nitpicky thing there. But really, for the most part, I had a really good time watching this. I think it was an unexpected surprise because honestly, with the premise and the way it was, I was kind of like, man, I don't know if this is going to be good or not. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't wowed by the previews. But you know what? The movie was all right. I had a good time. I did enjoy watching this film overall.
I'm slightly on the same page as you guys. I thought the acting was great. Dan Stevens, that guy's weirdly so good, and it makes me that much more mad at Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla X Kong because that guy's so good. And you made him dumb. How do you make this guy that's great dumb?
I feel like with him, just really quick, that if you're ever looking for just a very dramatized or overdone version of a type of character, like he's your guy. Because I think about like him in Kong, and he's supposed to be that like, super cool, like go with the flow, smart doctor guy or whatever. And like he plays into the absolute trope of what you think that character would be, but he does it in a very like charming way to where you're okay with it. And I feel like that was kind of his character too. Like, cause he was a detective. So he did the very stereotypical kind of disgruntled detective thing, but it worked. So anyways, just wanted to say that.
I mean, just to talk about some of the acting, I mean, this movie also kind of showed why Ant-Man Quantumania completely dropped the ball. Because, like, Catherine Newton's great. She's great in this movie called Freaky. She's great in, like, I've got a long history with her because she was on Supernatural for a long time. So, like, I knew her from that, you know, but that's why Ant-Man dropped the ball with her, you know, so fucking bad. Like, because she's good in this movie. I liked her characterization of that. I thought she did a really good job with that. What's his name? Like Kevin Durand or something like that. He played the guy that was the muscle. Yeah, Kevin Durand. That guy is one of those fantastic character actors that you just see him in shit. He's fantastic in Smoking Aces. He's one of the only okay things in X-Men Origin because he plays the Blob. He's one of the only okay things in that movie. He's in this show called The Strand. He's really good in that. He's just one of those great fucking guys in shit. And so it's just kind of great to see him in this and have a fairly like fleshed out role. Melissa Barrera, like, I'm not a huge fan of Screams 5 and 6, but you know what? She's good. And, you know, as much as I am so happy that Scream 7, Neve Campbell's coming back as Sidney Prescott, also kind of sucks that Melissa Barrera is not going to be in it for some bullshit.
Yeah, right.
Won't get into that, but for some bullshit, you know, because she's good. You know, so many people in this movie were good. There is one character in this movie. I won't get into it just yet. There's one character in this movie that I did absolutely hate to the point that it was making me not like this movie whilst that character was in this movie. I was hating everything about it. But also one big complaint, and I'll say this, it's a first act problem. But also the other first act problem I have is the first act of this movie to me is so incredibly long. And it's mainly because, this isn't a spoiler, we know Abigail's a vampire. How do we know this? That's the entire premise of the fucking movie, is that they kidnap a kid vampire. They kidnap, you know, baby Dracula. And it took so long for them to get to her being baby Dracula. It was driving me nuts. We know it's happening. We know what it is. That's the premise of this movie. That's the draw of this movie. That's why the fucking movie's named Abigail. That's why the trailers are like, oh shit, look at these people accidentally kidnap baby Dracula. And it took them 9 hours to get to the fucking point where they're like, oh fuck, baby Dracula. It was driving me nuts. Like, the movie presented itself like that wasn't the hook. Like that wasn't the trailer. That wasn't the name. That wasn't everything. We knew that was the hook going into the movie. So why did you take so long to get to that reveal? Like it was a surprise. It wasn't a surprise. We all knew. That's the sole reason why I was like, hey, I want to watch this movie. And it just took forever to get there. Once it got there, this movie gets way better. It just took so long to get there to me. And this other character. It's going to be the first thing I bring up is this character when we get to spoilers. Recommendations and scores?
Yeah.
Yep.
Recommendations and score.
Jastin, what you got?
Yeah, it's a recommend. I think it was a fun enough film. And I think that if you're just looking for something, you know, a violent, bloody good time, kind of a little vampire comedy, you know, it was good. You know, I think it was good in most of the ways that it's supposed to be good. And yeah, that was something that you said that I was actually going to say. I do think after seeing the movie that the preview and the way the preview was did kind of ruin how they revealed it, because in the movie, it felt like it was a big surprise. Like there was a reveal to finding out that Abigail was a vampire. But yeah, I get what you're saying. We all knew that. So I get you still have to tell your movie, but yeah, I think that they could have benefited from maybe not being so forthcoming with that in the preview, though I don't know how you would have gotten anybody in to watch it without it. And this is like the same thing I said about what's her name? Megan. Like, this is the hard thing about previews. Like, how do you do it and not have that reveal and then, but tell the story, you know, because it was shot and filmed and created before somebody spliced together a preview. So it's like, how would you have gotten people into the door if you don't tell them that she's a vampire? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's one of those tough things, but yeah, it did. You were sitting there going, okay, we know she's a vampire, you know.
But with that, Jastin, I think you have to be more honest when you're making the movie. You know when they wrote the movie, they knew that was the hook. You know what I mean? You know when this movie's written and you read the script, you go, oh, the hook, it's the kid's a vampire. You know damn well going into this that there's no way you can cut any trailer whatsoever that makes a single person want to see your movie without showing that. Be honest and don't make it a surprise when you film the movie. You know what I mean? Like they knew that going into it. And if you didn't know that, you were lying to yourself. Like, you know, this is one of the movies where I don't blame the trailer for ruining it. I think the filmmakers just should have been more honest with themselves and just got to it quicker. Because that's the elevator pitch. People kidnapped a baby vampire and they're stuck in a house with it. Okay, that's your elevator pitch. Like, that's the one sentence hook for this movie. Don't film it as a surprise.
Yeah. If you could have just found a way to film it in such a way to where it's surprising to the characters, I guess, but not necessarily the audience, then yeah, maybe it would have been okay. Or if you had told the story differently, like, does she become, like if there was something like, well, did the serum, did this make her a vampire? Did that turn her into a vampire? Did she get turned? You know, if there was some sort of mystery.
Or just another vampire, like a fake vampire at the beginning.
Yeah.
Like there was
maybe
like a vampire like servant that was at the house and they killed that and they go, oh man. And then they're like, did that thing turn her into a vampire? Oh no, she was the vampire the whole time. Like a bait and switch. You have to have a bait and switch. If you're going to make the trailer not betray this, you have to have scenes to make it seem like maybe there's you have to have another vampire there. You have to. And have that be the one you show in the trailer.
Yeah.
Going, oh, they're stuck in a house with a trailer or with a vampire after they kidnapped a little girl. It's like their hideaway was a vampire lair. Oh no, our bad, but we got to fight our way out. You make that the bait and switch.
Yeah. That could have worked. Yeah. Maybe that's what it needed. So yeah, but like, so yeah, that is definitely, I do think, a problem with the film, but like you said, but like we've all said, once the film starts having fun, it is really fun. And I think that that's really like where the heart of it really lies. And I just really enjoyed these performances, man. You know, I know we're going to go more in details of all of them, but
with the exception of one.
Everybody was just exceptional. Even that person, I know who you're talking about. And I think that person was exceptionally annoying. I think he did his job, man. Everybody just did their job to a T, dog.
Without saying anything yet, all I'll say is I didn't understand a fucking word that guy said, though. I couldn't understand. He's fucking giving lines of dialogue and I couldn't fucking understand the fucker because he's just mumbling. The guy opened his fucking mouth a millimeter to fucking talk. God, it was so fucking annoying. Like, from my understanding, that you two would maybe have a better understanding of what that guy says because you may or may not have watched him on another show and you're used to the way that fucker talks. This is the first time I have seen that man in a damn thing. And then on
it's
top
not
of that,
a good first impression.
I understood 3 fucking words that guy said for the entire time he was in this movie.
See, I didn't take that into consideration that I might be used to his voice because I didn't have, I know, but maybe you're right. There's a familiarity. I know the guy. So I was just like, oh, it's him, cool. But I can see where you're coming from with that. So maybe minus for one character Sterling didn't like. Everybody shows up, though, and does their job. And I think it's funny and it's fun. It's a fun movie. Why would I not want people to see a fun movie? So, yeah, go see it. And it was fun in the theater. There's some good sound editing and there's good, atmospheric stuff going on that really adds to the aesthetic of the film and stuff like that. I think it's fun. Do you have to watch it in the theater? Not necessarily, but it was fun. It was fun enough in the theater. I thought it was a fun enough theater experience. And my popcorn was really good. How sometimes when you go late and the popcorn is late popcorn and they don't really want to make anymore. And it's sometimes it can be crummy and stuff like that. But I got lucky because this time it was fresh. It tasted good. And it really just enhanced my movie experience.
My favorite popcorn is when the person who's making it doesn't give a fuck with how many scoops of salt they put in it. And they put 1 extra scoop because they weren't paying attention. And so you just get that. It's that orange popcorn salt at a movie theater. Jastin knows exactly the kind of salt I'm talking about. It's called Flavor All. If you're, I know what you're talking.
Yep.
And it's that person, they put the scoop and they go, did I do that? I don't remember. Let's just do another one just in case. Ooh, that's some damn good popcorn when they do that. And it looks better too because it's extra yellow. Ooh. Oh, it's my favorite popcorn.
You can always tell. You can always tell when you look at it because it's got that yellow. You're like,
yeah.
Ooh, that's going to be. So anyway, yeah, it was all good, man. The movie was good. The popcorn was good. So, yeah, I think it's good. Go see it. So, with that being said, we'll go. What do I want to give this? Is it a B? I don't know if it's a B. Is it a B? Is it? Do I got 20 points to take off of it? I got more than 20 points to take off of it. We'll go just under. We'll just go just under.
Jastin, you were infinitely more conflicted about your score for this than I assumed you would have been.
I'm just is it a B? I'm just is it a B or is it just a C plus? I'm really struggling with where I want to put it, but we'll do this. I'll give it the highest C plus I can. So we'll go 79.5. Those are fucking onions and not garlic out of 100.
That's a good line.
That was great. Yeah.
That's a good line. Heather, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend it. I think it's a good vampire film. I agree too that it's probably one of the best we've seen in a while. It's definitely better than Voyage of the Demeter. Last Voyage of the Demeter. Definitely better than Renfield. I'm trying to remember what other vampire things we've seen recently, but definitely better than those two. It's good. It's a good horror thriller film with some fun, silly moments and really good characters. The way that these characters are mostly fleshed out that's what I would have liked to have seen in Civil War. You know, it's just like you get a little bit of knowing them. You feel like you know them a little bit, you know? And yeah, I do. I think that there's some fun performances here. I agree. I think everybody delivered. Even our friend who was annoying delivered the annoyance to a high degree, but he just, yeah, I think everybody and the way everybody plays off of each other really also helps make this movie better. I think they just all do a great job. And little baby Dracula is so good too with her dynamic with everybody. She just really does a great job of being that just menace and awful, you know, vampire killing people. And I don't know, I just really think everybody brought it in this movie. And in spite of me having maybe a couple issues with some of how the sections of the movie were paced, it is fun. It's a fun watch. You know, I can't say I had a bad time at the theater with this. And yeah, I agree. It's hard to be like, how do you not give away the big thing of this movie? Because that's also the draw to it. So I think your solution for that of like a decoy vampire would have been a good way to do that. But yeah, it's fun. I did really enjoy it. I think I'm going to go. I mean, I think I'm maybe just a little bit lower than Jastin, but I think I'm going to go. I'll do 75 ballet dances in a possessed body out of 100, which was also probably one of my favorite scenes of the movie.
For me, I mean, I do recommend it. I'm not going to go as far as to say it's a must watch in a movie theater or anything like that. I'm not saying that Jastin said that either. I'm just saying I don't think it is, but I do think you should watch it. You know, I think it's good enough to be watched, and I think it's well made enough to where it translates well. If you know you got a nice TV, you know, and it's like 9:30 at night, got the lights off. I think you can get the ambiance close enough to where it'd still be effective with this. And you know, like I said, once the movie gets going, I don't have many problems with it. It just took a little longer to get going than I wanted it to. I will say this, when the movie gets going is when the character I hated fucking dies. So that's nice.
Oh, come on.
I would give it roughly around the same score as you guys, but I have to take some points off because of that character and how long it takes to get there. I'm going to give it a 64.5. 64.5. I don't know what to say. 64.5. Dan Stevens know how to play as a guy that just gets fucking shot and stabbed a lot and still keep going. Out of 100. Geez, I cannot fucking type today. That makes the Cinescore for this a 73.
Acceptable.
Spoilers?
Yep.
Spoilers.
Man, what's that motherfucker's name? Angus Cloud?
Yep.
Augustus Gloom?
Dean. Big Dean.
Man,
Good old
fuck that,
Fezco.
dude. Fuck that. No, I hated every fucking aspect of that guy being in this movie. I felt slightly bad when the movie ended and I found out that person's actually dead. But also at the same time, I hated everything about him in this fucking movie. That is the worst introduction to an actor I've ever fucking seen in my life. I have never hated an actor in an actual movie, like released in a theater, as much as I did this man the first time I've ever seen him in a theater, in a movie. Now, there are actors I've hated as much as him that were like, shit, I saw direct to DVD or some B-list bullshit or whatever, you know. But this was my introduction to this man, and I fucking hated him so fucking much.
I mean, I'll give you that. It's a really bad like first impression of him. It really is. Yeah.
I hate to break it to you guys. This show Euphoria is getting worse and worse in my eyes, and I haven't seen it yet. My introduction to Sydney Sweeney, bad. My introduction to this fucker, bad. I mean, what's it, Zendaya and Coleman Domingo are the only two people I know that are good in this fucking show. It's not looking good for Euphoria.
The funny thing is too, and like Jastin, I think you said you weren't caught up on season 2 yet, but I'm going to say right now, the character that Angus Cloud plays in Euphoria is an absolute fan favorite. He is everybody's favorite character other than Zendaya's character.
And
everybody loves him.
I am going to call bullshit on that because it is scientifically impossible for that man to be anybody's favorite anything.
I mean, he does. I get what you're saying about his mumbling, that he just has a very like lazy talk about him all the time. But it was magnified in this because I was thinking about this after seeing the movie, and I was like, I want to see some scenes of him in Euphoria again, because I'm like, am I just mistaken with like him being a favorite character? And so I went back and looked, and I'm like, yeah, he still sounds like that, but he's definitely magnified to the like mumbling, lazy talk in this, because you can understand him a lot more in Euphoria. And it's rough because I know you haven't seen the show and you probably won't, but like his dynamic with Zendaya is so great in that show. Yep. And yeah. And like my understanding is that the director for Euphoria just kind of found him like walking down the street in New York, like just found him there and was like, I want you in my show. Like he wasn't famous for anything before this.
He felt like some motherfucker from the fucking street. He didn't feel like an actual actor or anything like that. He felt like a random motherfucker. He felt like he was the director's cousin. And that's why he's in this movie.
He's definitely playing himself in any role that he's done. From what I've seen.
I don't want to have bad and mean thoughts about a dead person.
I'm just saying though, and it's hard to explain, and maybe Jastin can back me up, but I swear like he's so likable in Euphoria.
And I say impossible.
I mean, he was fine in this too. I mean, he was exactly what they wanted that character to be.
Jastin, no, you don't know. You don't know what he said. You don't know a single word that man said. Don't know. You can't say he was fine.
I mean, I
could hear him fine. I couldn't understand him fine. Those are two different things. I heard he was talking. He would go,
he definitely felt like the most just like, what is the word for it? Stereotypically written dumb character of a horror film, for sure.
I mean, I think Dom's being a little nice, Heather.
Dumb and irritating.
I hated that character, but it wasn't even that good kind of hate. Like you want to hate this guy. So when he dies, you know, you get some excitement out of it or anything like that. I wanted that man to die, but I didn't want him to be killed by a vampire because I felt like that would be too good of a death for that character. I wanted him to just like trip down the stairs and break his neck.
And just to clarify for those just tuning in, the character, not actually Angus Cloud, because may he rest in peace, but his character.
That's why I said, Heather, you need to be careful saying that he's being himself.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Because otherwise you're going to make me say disparaging things about a dead person. I'm talking about his character. So I'm hoping that is not his actual personality. And I hoped his character would have just tripped down the stairs. Or that if that sniper just shot him in the van for no reason other than he was there. I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. That tracks. because I hated every second of it.
It's the fact that he also, like, anytime he did something that was kind of like smart, he wanted to call it out in himself. That was kind of annoying. Like with the dodging the camera, so he went behind the van thing, but then also like I'm smart, I can read you all. And like just very much like wanted to just let everybody know that he was not dumb.
Nah, he was dumb. To me also, when I saw that scene with the whole car thing, I was like, man, that motherfucker got lucky and he's just trying to act like he did it on purpose. It's like whenever you're trying to like do a shot at pool and it's like a really difficult shot and you fuck up, but you accidentally knock a different ball of yours into the hole. And you're like, yeah, I meant to do that. No, you didn't. You're a fucking liar. You don't want to admit that that was an accident and it's not your fucking shot no more. Hated it. And to make matters worse, that was during the part of the movie where I was like, come on, get the fuck to this vampire shit. Why the fuck are we not at this vampire shit? Why the fuck is this motherfucker just walking around the screen, mumbling just constantly like he's fucking, Quavo or something from Migos and not fucking getting to the fucking vampire shit? I had like 45 minutes of that motherfucker mumbling and no vampires. It's fucking driving me nuts. And then to top it all off, he just dies off camera. Come on, get the fuck out of here with that. This fucking movie. So I had to take some points off. That literally just drove me fucking bonkers. That's really the biggest thing I wanted to talk about. What about you, Heather? What do you want to talk about?
That was it. That's the only spoiler you had for that movie.
That is the thing I wanted to talk about the absolute most when it came to this movie. When I was like, all right, we need to get ready for this movie. That's all I really wanted to talk about.
I see. I mean, I will also say, I wish that Giancarlo would have been in the movie a little bit more. Because he's always bringing it. Like I don't think he's probably ever turned in a bad performance, but he's not in enough. That's my take on it. But I think, as much as I also do like Dan Stevens and I like his character, Frank, I think he was Frank in this. He was kind of like that, disgruntled detective or whatever. I liked his dynamic for the most part with Joey, or Melissa Barrera's character. I think they had a good back and forth dynamic of like, I kind of hate you, but I also know like you could be valuable here type of dynamic between them, which was really good. Although I do feel like there were moments when like Dan Stevens' character expected Melissa Barrera's character to do a lot of things that you feel like as the former detective he would have done or wanted to do, especially if he's trying to get to the bottom of things and whatever. Like he felt like a little bit of a fumbling detective in a way. Like he was smart in some ways, but also kind of a fumbling detective. Like and I get that with the scene when he goes into the room where Abigail is, he doesn't realize that she's not blindfolded anymore. So he didn't like cover his face. But I don't know. I just feel like as a former detective, like you're like, take no chances. Let's just be ready and prepared. Like that kind of thing, I feel like is more what he would have done. And I don't know, just certain actions of them trying to plan things or split up or, take responsibility for you watch her versus you go and search here. I feel like he would have, I don't know. I don't know why. I just feel like he would have wanted to do more detecting than he would have just wanting to watch Abigail. But also, this is nitpicking because I did like his character and I think he did a good job in it. But I was just like, but you're the detective. Why aren't you doing this piece of it? Like, that was just kind of a thought I had. I also did like that towards the end when Frank decides that he's going to allow the guy to turn him into a vampire and all of that. And he's sort of going after Joey's character. I think that Joey deciding in that moment to call her son because she thinks that she's probably about to die, I liked that choice. I think that felt like a realistic choice. So I like that they kind of brought that, like, in that moment of, I don't know if I'm gonna make it out of here. First thing in your mind is, I'm never going to see my kid again. I need to call my kid. And so I liked that. I liked that they did that and went that route with it. I also really liked the scene where they are paying Joey to read all of them. That was an interesting way for us to sort of find out who each character was and what they were about. I did think it was like, I don't understand why they wanted to pay her for it, though. Like, I feel like that was an interesting choice.
Well, you're criminals, so you're just going to do some gambling. That's kind of all
I
that
guess
scene
that's
is.
fair.
It's just like, oh, you're about to all make a bunch of money. So it's like, yeah, gamble, be degenerates. We're criminals. Yay.
And that's scene. Fair. I guess, like, for me, I was thinking, but they're criminals that really need some money. So why would they be spending their money on that? But I get it. That's fair. They're gambling. They're just kind of like, we're about to be super rich. That makes sense. Actually, I didn't think about that. But, and I also liked that that's kind of where you see a little bit more of Catherine Newton's character, who I think she plays Sammy. I really loved her just kind of sociopathic nature and her just, you know, being like this spoiled rich kid brat who, like, she read her as, you're just in it for the thrill of it. Like, you're just in it for the fun of the adventure. You don't actually need the money or whatever. So I liked that. And I just kind of liked Catherine Newton's response to it, because she just kind of is, you know, laughing and smiling along and just kind of feels very, like, sociopathic in nature with her performance with it. And I thought that was really great. And speaking of that too, I mentioned earlier that one of my favorite scenes in this movie is after Sammy gets bit by baby Dracula. I forget her name. Oh, Abigail. Duh.
Little blood suck.
Yeah. After Sammy gets bitten by Abigail, and they're trying to figure out, like, what's actually going to happen to her because she won't tell them. And she's able to, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, she kind of healed her, like, bite, right? But at the same time, she sort of possessed her body. Is that kind of what happened? Did I get that right?
So it's kind of like the whole Renfield of it all. It's the ability to mentally take someone over. You have that psychic connection with them. That's the Renfield aspect of it all. They kind of did that, you know, because she was technically a vampire. There's that aspect to it too. So it's like, remember in Voyage to the Demeter, I can't believe I'm bringing up this movie, where, like, there was those characters that were like just the mindless zombies, but they were still vampires.
Oh yeah,
it's that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and I liked that aspect of it because I just liked that scene of Abigail is in her little sanctuary doing her ballet dancing, and Sammy is mimicking that. And just the creepy factor of how Catherine Newton performs that is so good, because you're just like, I don't know, maybe I'm more terrified of her because she's a real creepy, like, possessed person that's also a vampire now. Like, she just did a really good job with that. And then it's where you realize the stakes are changing because she actually is turning into a vampire. So I just really thought that was a really good moment. And yeah, she just, and there's just kind of like what you said, Sterling, something about Catherine Newton, like, she's always just so good in, like, any performance she does. Freaky, she was fantastic in Freaky. And she was also in Big Little Lies. She plays Reese Witherspoon's daughter, I believe. Like, she's so versatile. She'd do dramas. Oh yeah, she was the daughter in that 3 Billboards movie. Like, she's just very much diverse in a lot of ways with her acting, and she's so good. Like, I don't think she's ever been in a, like, had a bad performance, even if it's, you know, Quantum Mania. She wasn't bad in Quantum Mania. That movie was just not a good movie. So yeah, all of that to say, like, I liked that reveal of her actually being a vampire, and what they thought was going to happen to her isn't exactly what happened, but the end result was the same, that she did become a vampire. So yeah, I think that was really well done. And yeah, the guy who was the muscle, he was good. He was very, like, an interesting character, I would say. But I did like him. He had some endearing moments and some silly moments, you know. I think that he was supposed to kind of be the comic relief in some ways. And he did a good job with that. You know, he is that good character actor that you see in just so many different things. So, yeah, I think that because they are all a group of criminals trying to work together to watch this girl and stay alive and just get their money, like, they're all so different, but their dynamic together just works really well. And that is probably one of the most interesting parts of this movie, apart from, you know, Abigail doing her Abigail thing. And I just also, my only other, like, I think minor complaint I would say about this film is when Frank, or Dan Stevens, is the one in charge of watching Abigail. Like, I just feel like you knew what was coming with that. And he was just so easily thought that he had her when she had him all along. I just felt like you just saw that coming from a mile away. And then, oh yeah, the last thing as far as complaint wise is we did not need in any capacity to see Abigail's dad. We didn't need Papa, you know, Dracula. We didn't need it. It was, especially because he doesn't show up until the very end of the movie. You could have just not had that at all, and it would have been the same movie and probably had a little bit more of an impact, because then you just have Joey leaving the mansion and Abigail just there in disarray, and even just talking about, like, you know, maybe, oh, my dad's going to be home soon, get out of here. I feel like that element would have been completely fine with how they did the rest of this movie. So I would say that part wasn't needed at all. But yeah, I think that the action that they do and Abigail kind of fighting with some of these other characters was really fun to watch. And even that last battle of kind of Joey and Frank and Abigail all fighting each other sort of was a really cool scene altogether. So yeah, I think they do a really, really good job in this movie of giving you characters to care about, but having a fun journey with where it gets to, because I feel like a lot of it is going to be a predictable movie. You're just like, you know, the beats of, all right, people are going to die. People are going to turn into vampires. Who's going to survive? So it's really just a matter of watching the journey to see which character turns into which. Because, you know, there's going to be at least one survivor, and you assume it to be Joey just based off of the fact that, you know, she's the main character. But what happens to all these other characters? And so, yeah, it was just even though some parts of it were very predictable and familiar beats, it was done in such a different enough way to where, kind of like what Jastin said, I wasn't taken out of the movie because of these things. So yeah, that's all I got.
What you got, Jastin?
Yeah, so like what I was kind of alluding to in the non-spoiler when I talked about how it found fun ways to exposit things, I think is a real positive in the movie, because at the beginning when Angus Cloud starts the whole thing of, oh, I can read everybody in the game, like what I really liked about that scene is that first that character goes and he's wrong about everybody. But then the character that's more, but what was cool about it is that, okay, you could look at that and go, well, he was dumb and he just messed up and that was just a funny comedic beat and that was it. But really, it started with him, but it served the purpose of kind of showing how intuitive and how tactical, how smart, how resourceful Joey was. So when she goes around and she's telling everybody who they are and everything like that, and she's guessing more accurately, we're doing several different things. And to me, these are the hallmarks of good writing. Like, you start off the scene to be silly with one character, but then you use the scene to show the resourcefulness of your protagonist character, one of your main characters, but then you're also using it to exposit different things about all the other characters in the room. So that scene is an excellent scene in how you can creatively exposit information, because that's what that was. It was an exposition dump. But I haven't seen one in a long time that was done that well and that creatively, but still served the purpose of giving you a little bit of every character. So
yeah, that was good.
I thought that was a great scene. Just an excellent scene. So that was fine. And really, I think that that's kind of a testament to what you get throughout the movie, because throughout the movie, kind of like what Heather was talking about, there are these predictable things that happen. You know, it's a vampire movie and we're people trapped in here. You know, people are going to get ate up. You know, people are going to die. You know, people are going to get turned into vampire. So this movie is really about how do these things occur? And it always just had a little fun with what it was doing, whether it was Abigail creepily dancing towards somebody and doing her ballerina stuff, or whether it was, you know, a character getting pulled somewhere and then their head getting split open, or like you talked about with when Sammy became a vampire. That was really cool how they did that. That was cool how she was doing the ballet stuff. That was cool how when they both walked into the room, Joey and Frank walk in and they could kind of tell something is wrong. And then she's all trying to manipulate them, just come a little closer and all of that kind of stuff. And like, you know, the way that all of that played out was very cool. So, and I think that added to the fun of the film, because, and this was the advantage of you kind of learning the rules with the characters, because we really didn't know, okay, is this the kind of vampire that bites you and you become one, or is this something else entirely? You know, you're kind of asking those questions as things are happening. And they waited for that Catherine. They made you sort of wait for that Catherine Newton turn. It wasn't like she started getting sick or showing signs, or it wasn't like there were these for sure things you were seeing where it was like, oh, she's definitely going to become a vampire. I like how they made you wait for that a little bit to question what kind of vampire is this exactly. I like how certain things worked and other things didn't. Like the steak stuff wasn't really working, but then the sunlight hit, and then we saw a part of her just, you know, evaporate or combust or whatever with the sunlight. So you're like, oh, okay, that works. So that made it fun. Even though, yes, there are some typical rules and typical things and cliche things we see with vampires, the way this movie chose to reveal those things to you was just more fun. It was a little more interesting. It's a little more, just a little more attention to detail, and just a strong writer thinking very well whenever you're crafting these scenes. You know, just because, yes, we know the rules are going to be the same, a lot of them are going to apply, doesn't mean that we have to reveal those things the same way every movie does, or just do the things the same way. So I just really applaud a lot of those narrative choices that the movie made. So it made even that journey of just, okay, we know Abigail's a vampire, but what can she do? What is she really capable of? I like that how it chose to reveal those things to you bit by bit, rather than just having one fight scene and everything is revealed at one time. I like how the movie systematically revealed those things to you. And just talking about everybody's acting, man, just everybody just played their role to a T, man. But I too liked Joey and Frank's dynamic. This dynamic of, well, I'm a detective, so I know things and I have skills. And then him also recognizing that Joey is probably the smartest, most tactical, most resourceful person in the room. So him naturally being like, maybe this is the person I can most survive with makes sense to me. And her deducing a similar thing when characters die. You know, as characters are dying off, she's looking at him like, I don't like him, but he perhaps is my best chance. So all of those things were adding up for me. And then just some of the other dynamics, like with Frank and Peter the Muscle, man, whenever they had an interaction, it was pretty funny. Or when Frank would have to point out some obvious thing that Peter wasn't getting. Or whenever, they first discover Abigail's a vampire, and then Peter, I forget the name of what they called the assassin or whatever. But when Peter's like, well, if she's a vampire, I wonder if the assassin turned her into a vampire or whatever he said. And then Frank was like, she is the assassin, you dumb fuck, or whatever he said. Like they just had a funny back and forth where like he wouldn't get something and then Frank would just bluntly say what he was missing or whatever. Like there was a couple of times that they did that. And that was funny. Or like, those are just fucking onions. That scene. He was always great with those little like bites that he would take at people. So like, I like how dickish he came off and everything like that, because when we get to the end and then he's a vampire and it's like, man, he was already a dick. Now he's a vampire and a dick. Like, so it just kind of double stacked and made him. And so it just made it even more entertaining whenever he was a vampire. And he was a good final kind of adversary in this. And some of the turns that the movie makes. Sorry, I like how my cough just suddenly came when it was my turn. But even some of the choices that the movie makes, like, you think it's just going to be about surviving Abigail, but then it sort of becomes this other thing where there was this deal made, and we find out that old boy from Breaking Bad, Lambert, his character, we found out actually he was turned earlier, and so there was this whole deal and these inner workings, and he makes this deal with Frank, and then Frank takes the deal to become a vampire. Man, sorry, I just am dying for some reason. Maybe I'm a vampire now. But what I liked about that is that it wasn't unpredictable in that, I didn't see it coming. There wasn't that it was a shock of it, but I just liked that this was having fun with the story. You think it's about this one thing and then it becomes about more than that. So I liked that. And I like how it positioned Abigail and Joey at the end of the movie so that by the time we get to the end and we defeated Frank and we sort of come to this agreement and she lets, and they sort of let Joey go, you understand why it felt earned for the most part, just based on what you understood about Abigail, what you understood about the characters. There, you could understand and see that there was something about Abigail and having a father that she felt like doesn't care about her. And then Joey being a mother who wants to care for her son. So, there are some parallels and things that the film was doing, and you can understand why the characters arrived where they arrived by the end. So even though with the vampire stuff, I didn't understand all the rules because so even though Frank bit her, I guess she was okay because Frank died. So that broke it.
It takes,
and that's not always. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it takes a little bit of time. It's not instantaneous. Like the Sammy character didn't turn right away, so that's why she didn't turn right away. But also, traditionally in vampire lore, if a maker dies, the other one, is cured. Oh, well, I shouldn't say traditionally. That's something that does happen, though. They do it a lot in werewolf stories. Very, very common in werewolves. You kill your maker, you're healed. But this might be going something closer to like a vampire spawn type of scenario, where the ones that are bitten like that and aren't given blood, how he was given Lambert's blood. That's what turned him to full vampire. This might make you essentially what's like called a vampire spawn in some mythology or some lores. And therefore you are, for all intents and purposes, a vampire, but you're also just like that, puppet vampire. And so maybe being a puppet vampire, if your maker dies, you are cured. Maybe that's the lore they're going with. It exists sometimes. Not every vampire thing, but I have seen it before.
Okay. And that's what I was just going to say is that I've seen both. So, but kind of the advantage to not having to explain all the rules is that you get to just kind of pick and choose what rules you want to use for the sake of the narrative. It could have ended with her escaping and then she's there with her son and then all of a sudden you see teeth grow or something. You could have, there's, several, you could have went that way too, but I guess the luxury of not, and this is what I mean, like the luxury of kind of not having to explain those things means that you get to, you get more options than a movie that would try to explain those things. And then we're looking for consistency. So again, it gets away with it in that regard so that we can have a resolution and end the movie. But is it the biggest sin? No, because like Sterling said, we've seen it before. But I thought that, but I wanted to at least talk about that as one of the examples of what this was able to do. Because because sometimes it's the person that directly bit you if they die, but sometimes it's got to be the original maker who bit all of them has to die in order for it to be broken, so whoever turned to you, that person would need to die. And then sometimes they die, but you're still a vampire. It's just when you've seen it all those ways and you see it in the film and none of it was explained to you. So you automatically jump to, I guess, just whatever version you're most familiar with. But, is it the biggest sin? No. But, but that's a byproduct of not having to explain all the specific lore with these particular vampires. Other than that, though, like that was really the only nitpick I had. I just think that the rest of the movie was, I just found it to be really good. And a lot of these actors, I really enjoyed them. So I hope that they get, I get to see them in more stuff, because a lot of them, they really showed up in this movie and were very, very strong and all delivered some strong performances. Because I do think that the biggest thing about this movie is the casting. I feel like if you had casted the wrong people, I don't think this would have been as executed as well. The comedic timing, the rapport with the different characters, I really feel the casting was pivotal in this, and they nailed it. So overall, enjoyed it, had a great time.
I mean, this movie did ultimately survive casting Angus Cloud.
Come on, man.
Just its biggest flaw.
You had to have a character like that, though. You had to have somebody, he was trying to hook up with the girls. He was just a getaway car, but he was always questioning stuff and wasn't very smart, but was good at the job of being a criminal. I mean, come on, man. He fit the bill. He fit your bill. He
was not good at being a criminal, and he didn't fit shit, Jastin.
But he was the driver. He drove well.
No, he didn't. He drove okay. He lucked out. Like I said, he lucked out. I want to hear that shit.
Damn.
That fucking character. What was his name? Jimmy Dean?
I think just Dean.
Jimmy Dean breakfast sausage.
That sounds good.
Man, that
Right?
motherfucker talked like he had 9 sausage biscuits in his mouth at any given point in time.
That's a fair description.
Miserable. I don't know why you hate me, Jastin. Why do you not want me to understand dialogue? What do you have against me understanding dialogue, Jastin?
I heard him every time. He's like, hey, what's your name? What's your name, girl?
You do not know he said that. You're just inferring through context clues, motherfucker. You didn't actually hear those words.
What's your name, girl? It's like,
Then
give
He
names.
asked,
I figured
he
out
asked
what
if
it
she
is.
had a boyfriend so many times.
I figured out what it is.
so-
Jastin saw the closed caption version of it in the theaters. So he knew what he said just because he was able to read it on the screen.
Yeah.
I didn't have that privilege.
I did. I heard him, Sterling. I just knew him, and I was familiar with him because I watched Euphoria.
That motherfucker
That's
was
the
all
problem.
that
You
guy
haven't
was
seen
like-
Euphoria.
He's like, I'm Jimmy Dean. I can remember.
But Sterling, you've grown up with characters and Looney Tunes and stuff. You that mumble all the time.
Yeah. And they're typically animals you're not meant to understand, like the Tasmanian devil. You're not actually meant to understand that guy's words. He's a blah, 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 blah.
Or the teacher, the Peanuts teacher.
That's all adults in the Peanuts. And it's because that's the perception that the kids have of it. Justin, all you're doing is proving my point.
But you ought to be used to the mumbling. You ought to be used to the mumbles. We've grown up with the mumbles.
Yeah,
What about Dick Tracy?
You know, Justin, you can be used to the mumbles, but also everything you just quoted as examples of mumbling are characters that you're not supposed to actually understand the words they say.
Oh.
So you just proved my point that you weren't actually supposed to understand this guy, which means you're a liar when you said you could understand him.
Come on,
And you're doing exactly what the movie didn't want you to do.
I understood him because I've had a history of mumble. I just know them. I know I'm good with the mumble characters. We got that. I got that history of mumble.
Jastin, quit acting like this is fucking this character's version of Through the Wire with his mouth all sewn shut and shit. Shut up. It's not that. Quit acting like that.
This man said Through the Wire. Man, that song goes hard.
It does. I wish I could listen to it, but that fucking guy's an asshole.
I know. Damn. Why didn't he apologize real quick so I can listen to his music?
Well, he did, Jastin. He said that he's fine with it. He's now fine with Jewish people because Jonah Hill is Jewish. But then, Jonah Hill's an asshole, so that doesn't help.
Damn, we got close though.
Yeah. What's he going to do next? Go, Henry Kissinger sounds like a Jewish name. So I like Jewish people now. Is that what he's going to say next?
Oh, man. I hope if he says that, he mumbles it where you can't hear it.
You hope he breaks his jaw again?
Damn, why you got to go extreme? Why you got to get all... I just said I hope he mumbles it, not he breaks his jaw and causes him to mumble. I just mumble that. Just don't really say that where people can hear it. Just mumble that part. That's all I'm saying. He should mumble. He should mumble more, actually.
Yeah, like he
way.
did in Through the Wire when his jaw was sewn shut. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, Jastin, you ultimately circled back around to what I said, even though you're like, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, when you put it that way, he needs to break his jaw again. I don't know if I wanted that to happen.
Yeah, I kind of do. I want him to shut up for a little bit. Quit saying dumb shit. That's not my preferred way for it to happen, but if that's how it happens, I'll take it.
Okay. Point proven. Point taken. I understand you now.
Because like I said, I feel like just one of these days he's going to be like, man, I'm hip hop's Henry Kissinger. And that's why I like Jewish people now again. I don't want that.
Oh, man.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we don't want that.
You guys got any more thoughts about Little Bloodsuck?
No.
Nah.
The Nutcracker starring Little Bloodsuck is what I should have said.
Pretty much.
I also called her Tiny Dancer.
They did call her Tiny Dancer.
Isn't that from that, what's his name? Elton John?
Did you really just try to say Elton John like Sean John? Can we not bring up Sean John either? That's not necessarily the best thing in the world to bring up.
Yeah, that's true.
Considering everything that man, the man whose clothing brand that is did. He probably did some of those crimes wearing Sean John.
Yeah, somebody else who should have been mumbling. Just not doing all that bad stuff.
See, you're saying the character's bad, just like me. There you go. It's about time you caught up. On that note, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the CinemaSlayers podcast. Check us out on the internet at www.cinemaslayers.com. We're CinemaSlayers podcast on Facebook. We're cinema_slayers on Instagram, Threads, and Letterboxd. We are at CinemaSlayers pod on TikTok and YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating review. We'd really appreciate it. Really help us out. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your friends, tell your friends' family, tell your family's friends. Most of all, tell those dear sweet mothers, because dear sweet mothers love
Dan Stevens?
I was going to say dancing little girl vampires.
That too. Yeah. Little tiny dancers.
Yeah. Shout out to Plug Migo and Mundo Cho for our theme song and logos respectively. Just remember, here at the CinemaSlayers podcast, we are pro slut, pro Sydney, and pro naked. You Cinefans are Knuff. And justice for Chris. And
always.
Todd.
Yep. Todd probably talked to Dan Stevens about it all.
Yeah. And from this base of operations, this is my last time saying this, but, Henry Kissinger's still dead. I'm moving to a new location to keep a better eye on him. And as I always end this podcast, these YouTube videos, and the TikToks, just remember, according to Jastin, Moon Knight is Best Picture winner.
but you.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
Come on.
Cinema Slayers.
I was going to see if any of my cats would jump up here, and they didn't.
Bummer.
Like, they all came in the room, but none of them came to where I could pick them up.
Yeah.
So that makes it tough. Well, you could hear one of them at least.
Two of them made their two of them made their debut last week.
Well, it's the only two that have never made a debut.
Yeah.
So they're the only ones that could debut. They're right here. I just can't reach them.
Understandable.
So it is what it is. But this was a long one. So I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Later.